All right, what's happening, everybody? Let's go ahead and get started. We're starting a little bit late here. Unfortunately, I was almost going to have to cancel this week's episode of Tech Thursdays. But looks like we are going to be able to do this. We're going to have a discussion this evening about the RTX 50 series because those are very much inbound. The launch is now imminent. And then we will also talk about the RDNA 4 cards from AMD. I don't know exactly when those are supposed to show up. There's a lot of rumors about next week regarding some sort of announcement for the 9070, the 9070 XT, but I don't really know what specifically is going to be announced, if anything at all. So what we're going to go off of is what we know for a fact, and that's going to be the RTX 50 series, because that is launching 2 weeks from today. So how many people here are planning on getting an RTX 5080? Well, let's start with the 5080. How many here are planning to get the RTX 5080? Anybody? Do I need to do a poll? Is anybody here going to get one of those? No one seems to want one. Wow, it's like crickets. Hold on, do I really need to do a poll, or should I do something? What's the other one? Start Q&A? No, start a poll. Who here is getting the RTX? Okay, hold on. It's a very simple question. Are you getting the RTX 5080? Yes or no? Very easy. Wait, so most people are saying no. Most people are not going to get one. Wow. A lot of no. For the RTX 5080, almost 80%, 82% of the audience is not going to get an RTX 5080. I'm an XTX enjoyer, and that's so weird. Instead of saying an XTX owner, you're an XTX. So does that mean that you're like borrowing one? Saying you're an XTX enjoyer, that can have multiple different meanings. It can mean that you either own one, or you're borrowing one, or you were gifted one, or you know what I mean? That's such a, I've never heard anybody actually say that. I'm an XTX enjoyer. Wow. So not a lot of people are gonna get the RTX 5080. That's interesting, because the RTX 5080 is launching $200 less than the RTX 4080. So you're actually getting a price reduction. No one seems to realize that. The RTX 4080 launched at $1,199. So that was $1,200. $1,200 US dollars. But now they're offering the same tier of product, only it's the next generation, for $200 less. So it's interesting that nobody seems to care. Well, some of you are going to get an RTX 5080. There's like 23%. So almost 1 out of 4 people here will get an RTX 5080. Or at least that's the plan. So very interesting. All right, so we're going to go ahead and end this here. So about 1 out of 4 are going to try to get an RTX 5080. So the next question, not how, are you getting an RTX 5090? Okay, it shot up like 100% instantly. Oh, so there's a lot of people that are saying no. So, okay. This is interesting. So let's see if this one ends up being very similar to the RTX 5080. So it looks like it's about a 40% yes, 60% no. It's looking like that. But that does imply that there's slightly more. So it's like 1 out of 3. 1 out of 3 people watching the stream plan on getting an RTX 5090. Whereas with the 5080, it looks like it's 1 out of 4 people. That's interesting because that still implies that the large majority are not going to get either of those GPUs. Okay, so let's see. I feel like, so there's a couple things about these GPUs. The gaming GPU it's starting to feel like the gaming GPU is the RTX 5080. That one, did I end the poll? How come I don't see? Okay, there we go. So yeah, it's about 1/3 versus like 2/3 are not going to get the 5090. The gaming GPU is the 5080. It's starting to look like the gaming GPU is the 5080. And the 5090 is, I mean, it's like, yeah, you can game on it, but I feel like its purpose is different. Like I feel like the mass media, the reviewers, well, maybe not all the reviewers, but I think a good percentage of them are probably going to run with the narrative that if you want a gaming graphics card, the 5080 is the graphics card. If you want some sort of like production, content creation, productivity, that sort of thing, AI, whatever the excuse or whatever the use case, not excuse, but whatever the use case is that justifies spending all that money on a graphics card. Because keep in mind, $2,000 MSRP, that isn't even the computer. That's like one part of the computer. So and typically, if you're going to spend that much money on one part of the computer, that means that the computer itself, the total build cost, is going to be extremely expensive. Like when all told together. Especially if somebody is planning on building a whole new computer with nothing. Like, I'm talking like nothing. So that you have to buy a graphics card, you have to buy the CPU, you have to buy the RAM, you have to buy the motherboard, the case, the monitor, like everything. And the other thing, too, is the 5090 seems like it is meant to be paired up with a 4K monitor. Like, I can't see that GPU having been designed by the team that created it, like, thinking in their minds, we're going to work together for the next 3 years to build, or 2 to 3 years, to build the next generation, codename Blackwell, flagship GPU, and we're going to design this thing for 1080p resolution. I don't think that was in the books when they were writing the spec for like what the intended use case is. That GPU is intended for 4K, so I still believe that anyone considering a 5090 better have a 4K monitor, or at the very least, they are expecting themselves to get a 4K monitor when they get the 5090. So the cost for that, and I mean, it could be any random 4K monitor, but ideally it would be a high-end 4K monitor, not some, not some like bargain bin Dell for like $250, 60 hertz, whatever, 27-inch 4K, like not like that kind of monitor. Like something. The fact that these 50 series cards are including the newer DisplayPort, like what is it, DisplayPort 2.2, 2.1, whatever it is, and there are monitors coming out this year that support that new standard for DisplayPort, and these GPUs are PCI Gen 5, 2.1B. Yeah, the fact that all of those, everything that I just said, all those new standards, all those new display interfaces, all that stuff, all that good OLED stuff. We've talked about OLEDs before. We'll probably talk about OLEDs again a little bit later in the stream. But to me, I'm just thinking out loud here. Like if I was designing the 5090, the goal would have been to pair it up with a 4K monitor, not some lower end monitor, because otherwise the 5090 would not be that fast. I'm just saying, like realistically, it doesn't need to be that fast if it's not going to be paired up with a 4K monitor. So that's really what it's meant to be. It's meant to handle 2160p as the standard go-to resolution that it's meant to be paired up with. So that being said, for the 5080, going back to the 5080, because it seems like less people are interested in the 5080. The 5080, it can do 4K, but if you want to max out 1440p, and if you already have like a high refresh 1440p monitor, the 5080 actually is the correct, it's like the logical choice. It's the rational decision. Like it's like you feed all the info to an AI algorithm, it will conclude, like if one of the variables is 1440p, if 1440p is mentioned at all to the AI algorithm, it'll automatically say 5080 is the upgrade path. So that's what it seems like to me, because the more, like the higher up you go on the GPU stack, you best believe that you need to be pairing that up with a high-end monitor as well. Otherwise, I don't know what you're doing. So it's like people can ultimately do whatever they want. Like people can pair up a 5090 with a 1080p monitor. I personally will never do that. I think that's foolish. That's a big waste of money. You will never see the full potential of that graphics card if you do that. So you're basically bottlenecking the GPU if you run it at 1080p. You're literally bottlenecking the GPU if you run it at 1080p. So, because you will end up being CPU bound. No matter what CPU you use, even the 9800X3D will bottleneck the GPU if you pair it up with 1080p. So that's kind of dumb. So don't do that. Please don't do that. Do not spend over $2,000 on a GPU just to run it at 1080p resolution. That is stupid. That is foolish. So do not do that. There are better options. There are more cost-effective options for that sort of resolution, for 1080p resolution. 1080p has basically already been surpassed as far as I'm concerned. Like, I feel like 1440p also has been surpassed. So really, if you want to be on the bleeding edge of technology, if you want to be a true enthusiast, it's really going to be 4K. That's where we're at now. So 4K, like if you guys haven't gamed at 4K because you don't have a 4K monitor, you are thinking of getting these super high-end GPUs, well, don't get one. My word of advice is don't get one of these super expensive $2,000 GPUs if you don't, until you have a 4K monitor, or unless you're going to do both at the same time. You're going to buy the GPU and you're going to buy the monitor at the same time. So especially this year, I feel like this year is going to be the big year for those who are still not on 4K, because this year we're going to be seeing these new 4K 27-inch panels that are super crisp. They're OLED, they're high refresh, but they're also small enough to use for things like competitive gaming or multi-monitor. We don't talk about multi-monitor. Most people that use a GPU like the 5090 for content creation are most likely going to be using more than one monitor, if not at least some like ultra wide, but 4K is technically higher res than ultra wide. So, because 3440 by whatever, 3440 by 1440 or whatever the ultra wide resolution, 21 by 9 resolution, aspect ratio, whatever that is. I don't know what that is because I'm not a big fan of ultra wide. But that is actually easier to run than 4K. 4K is harder to run than ultra wide because 4K is more pixels. It's more pixels. 3440 by 4. Thank you. Yeah. So that one, that is easier to run than, oh wait, 3860 by 21. Is there such a thing as that? Is there really ultra wide 4K? That's news to me. I've never heard of ultra wide 4K. 3860 by 2160p. Is that like real? Because what is that? You meant to say 3840? Like actual, that's not ultra wide. Yeah, 3840 by 2160 is a typical 4K monitor. So I didn't even know there was such a thing as 4K ultra wide, if there is such a thing. But see, a lot of this conversation is about resolution. It's about the monitor resolution more than anything else. That's the other thing too. Like, if somebody's, so far I've been describing the scenario of somebody who is going to build a brand new computer from scratch with nothing. They're not doing an upgrade. They're actually just building a new computer for the first time. Now, if you're somebody who is upgrading or you want to upgrade so, we talked about this last week. Like, who should upgrade? Who should upgrade if they already have an RTX 4090? So, I'll tell you, the people that should consider that are the people who are on 4K monitors. If you have a 4090 today, and you have a 1440p monitor, you should not upgrade unless you plan on upgrading your monitor this year, because I don't think it's going to be worth it. To be honest, like 1440p with a 4090 is pretty much, that's going to skip the 50 series. Unless you're changing to 4K within the next 2 years and you already have a 4090, you are not the candidate to upgrade to the 5090. Like, that's not the intended upgrade path. You are better off skipping this generation and waiting for the next generation, because you're gonna be underwhelmed. I feel like you're gonna be underwhelmed because you're just gonna like hit a CPU bottleneck and you're just gonna be like, oh wow, okay, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, don't do that. Like, you want to be on a 4K monitor. So if you're on a 4K monitor and you already have a 4090 and you play modern games that really push the limits of graphical fidelity. So games like Black Myth Wukong, that's like my go-to example now. Black Myth Wukong. If you're playing Black Myth Wukong on a 4K monitor with a 4090, you already know that the 4090 cannot handle Black Myth Wukong with everything maxed out at 4K native resolution. It just can't do it. It's going to be sub 60 FPS. So those are the sort of people. That's just one game. We haven't even talked about other games like Final Fantasy 16. Like, I don't know if Hellblade Senua was super hard to run at 4K because I never played that game. But there were some other games that came out last year and also the previous year that really, like, it really stressed the 4090 at 4K resolution. So I really think that those are the sort of people that are going to see an actual benefit by upgrading, by spending that much money. Those people who have a 4090 already spent a whole lot of money to get the 4090. So they're doing themselves an injustice if they're not on a 4K monitor and they're about to drop another $2,000 on another Nvidia flagship. For what? You know, like if you're, because here's the other thing, guys. The lower, let me clear something else that I think a lot of people don't know. The lower the resolution, the less, the closer the GPUs will be in performance. What that means is that if you're using a 4090 and a 5090 at 1080p, the difference is only going to be like 15 to 20%. 15 to 20% at 1080p. You go up to 1440p, now it's more like 15 to maybe 20%, possibly. But you go up to 4K, now you're going to see a big gap. Now you're going to see Nvidia's advertised 30% uplift, maybe even more in some specific titles. And I'm not talking about DLSS. I'm talking about 4K, native resolution, RT, no upscaling, no frame gen. I'm talking about the pure raw uplift from 4090 to 5090. You want to see the biggest generational leap between those two cards, you have to be on a 4K monitor. Otherwise, you're going to see a smaller difference between the two of them. The lower the resolution, the closer the 4090 and the 5090 will perform. The higher the resolution, the further apart they will be. Why? Because if we go to, let's go to Tech Power up here, and we were going to look at that article, but let's look at this. So the reason why is because it's very simple. It's simply the difference in the hardware. Because when you push the GPU to its limits, and how do you do that? High resolution. You raise the resolution. You increase the number of pixels that it has to render. The 4090 has a 384-bit bus. That's how wide it is. 24 gigabytes across a 384-bit bus and 16,384 CUDA cores, TMUs, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The 5090 has a 512-bit bus. So it has a wider memory interface versus the skinnier interface on the 4090. So what this means is this was engineered to handle higher resolutions. This is a sign that the GPU was designed by the engineering team to handle high resolutions, such as 4K resolution, for example. That combined with the higher memory bandwidth offered from GDDR7 and the 21,760 CUDA cores, this to me screams this is a 4K graphics card. Like, the engineers developed this, they designed this with 4K as the goal for the operating resolution. So also, the other thing too is if you look at Nvidia's benchmarks that they showed, all of their tests were at 4K resolution. So the lower clock speed doesn't matter because the memory interface is wider. The wider the interface, the slower the clock speed. You can either go slower and very wide, or you can go very skinny and very fast. So that is not a concern at all. So the last time we saw a 512-bit graphics card was, well, okay, who here remembers the last time, the most recent 512-bit graphics card? Who here can name that graphics card? Does anybody remember the most recent in history 512-bit graphics card? I'll give you a hint. It's a graphics card that has the Radeon brand. What is the Titan 4K AI Tops? What is that? I don't even know what that is. That sounds fake. Okay, so Felipe got it. The RX 390X. The R9 390X is actually the correct name. So you are correct. The 390X. I typically think of the 290X, but you are correct because technically there was a 390X. So the AMD Radeon R9 390X was the last time in history that a 512-bit GPU existed. This was on GCN. This was originally the R9 290X, which released in the late summer of 2013. This GPU, the 290X, not the 390X, the 390X was 2015. If we go look at this, 2015. But you want to go further back, the 290X was 2013. And you can see the big die that this was designed for to utilize that 512-bit interface. So this is the last time we saw a GPU with a 512-bit bus. Now, the last time Nvidia did a 512-bit was a very long time ago. That was, I want to say that was like the GTX 280, or maybe, I don't think it was the GTX 480. I don't know. Let me see. GTX 280. The GTX 2, yeah, the Nvidia GeForce GTX 280 was a 512-bit graphics card with GDDR3 memory. This was, I believe this was not Fermi. This was the one before Fermi, which would have been Tesla. Is this the Tesla? Yes, this is the Tesla. This is June 16th, 2008. That was a very long time ago. Was the last time they did an actual single die 512. So AMD has the more recent one with the 290X from like 2013, I think was the year. Let me see, where is the actual GPU? Let me see, where is this thing? Man, there are just too many GPUs now. Like, look at this. 290X, there it is. 290X, Hawaii. 4 gigabytes, GDDR5, 512-bit, and it was sometime in 2013. If we scroll down, yeah, October 2013. So, okay, so it was a little bit later than I remember. $550, PCI Gen 3 X16. This was the most recent one in terms of like the actual design, because the Granada was a rebrand. So, in general, the wider memory interface can more efficiently fill the pixels for the GPU. And that means that as you increase your resolution, the wider your memory interface is, the better your GPU can handle the workload. So, like, for example, if you do, like, okay, this is the reason why, if you recall, the GTX, or GTX, the RTX, what is it, 4060? The 4060 and the 3060, do I have that right? Let me see. 4060. And this one would be, let me see, let's find the 3060. So are these the same? Yeah, okay, yeah, so this is a good example. Okay, so what does it mean? How do you know the difference? So notice something. These two GPUs perform almost identical to each other. But the reason why people often overlook the difference is because these GPUs are marketed for 1080p resolution. So all of the benchmarks from Nvidia, all of the typical like comparisons that reviewers will show are from 1080p resolution. At that resolution, a 128 versus a 192 will not be as pronounced. However, if you were to try to run these GPUs at 1440p or worse, if you were going to try to use them at 4K resolution, which neither one of these GPUs were designed to handle 4K resolution, let alone 4K gaming at native 4K resolution, no upscaling, no frame gen, you will see that the 3060 actually is faster than the 4060 at 4K resolution. And the reason why it's faster than the newer GPU is because it has a wider memory bus. So, in general, I can look at a graphics card. All I have to do to guess at what the GPU's intended resolution is I can look at the memory bus. So if I see 192, I'm like, oh, that's 1080p. If I see 128, that's obviously 1080p. So I would not consider these. If I was going to build a computer, like if someone was going to ask me to recommend them a GPU, the very first question I ask them is not what CPU they're using, not what motherboard they're using. No, the very first question I'm going to ask them is, what is their monitor's resolution? What's the monitor resolution? Because the monitor resolution will determine more about the gaming experience than the CPU, the RAM, the motherboard, all the RGB in the case. None of that stuff is going to make much of a difference if you're trying to, like, let's say, like, oh, you're going to buy a $200 graphics card. Like, let's say you're going to buy the Intel B580 that just came out a few months ago. So you can, because all the reviewers said it's so good. All the reviewers said it's so good. So I should get that, right? Should I just get the Intel GPU? Well, without knowing what the resolution is, the answer is I don't know. Because like, you want a 4K monitor? No, you don't want to get the Intel GPU. See, so that's the reason why, look, like, kind of glancing at this, I can guess as to what the intended resolution is. So for a long time now, most flagship GPUs have been around 384, and then the one underneath it would be like 256, or in some cases 320, but that's very rare. And then, at least for Nvidia's big die has historically always been a 384-bit bus. So now we can bring up Paint. Now it's time to bring up Paint. Let me see, where is it? Okay, there it is. Okay, so we look at the big Nvidia cards. RTX 4090 was 384-bit. RTX 4080 was... Why am I doing a double one of these? I should just do this, so it's like easy. So this one was a 256. RTX 4070, I don't even know, what was this one? 192? And then RTX 4060 was 128. We just looked at it. So Nvidia will almost always, historically speaking, Nvidia almost always has a 384 as the top, a 256 is the one underneath, then a 192, then a 128. We can see this play out when we look at the, what am I thinking of here? Well, let's just observe the trends. Let's observe the trends. I want to leave some space for the 50 series. So let's do Ampere. RTX 3090 was 384. RTX 3080 was, strangely enough, it was one that we don't normally see that often. It was the rare 320. Then there was the 3070, which I think was a 256, if I'm not mistaken, although maybe I'm wrong. I gotta think about that one. And then there was the RTX 3060, which was 192. So this one was kind of a strange generation in that regard. They actually did like larger dies than, or they like, what they did was they like cut some die, or they had like a middle one or something. I gotta go back and look at which one was what. But anyway, that was what they did. And then one thing I need to look at real quick before we do the next one is RTX 2080. What was this one? Okay, so that one was that. Okay, so then we had RTX 20. They had 2080 Ti, which was the 384. RTX 2080 was 256, and then so forth. Actually, this one was the weird one where I think there was like a 192 and a one. What was this one? Wait, is that right? This was the weird one, wasn't it? This is the one that had like a strange. I gotta look this one up because I forgot like what this one is. RTX 2060 was 192. Oh, so hold on. So RTX 2070, what was that? Is this one? Oh, interesting. Okay. So they did that. They did this. Okay, yeah, that's why. This was kind of weird because I think they did some weird thing to this one for the Super one or something like that. It's been so long, whatever. The point is, you look at the trends for the last 3 generations. The top die was a 384, a 384, a 384. It's always been like that. You go further back, same thing. 1080 Ti was a 384. 1080 and 1070 was 256. In fact, 10 series was identical. Now that I think about it, the 10 series, the GTX 1080 Ti was a 384. The GTX 1080 was a 256. The GTX 1070 was also a 256. And the GTX 1060 was a 192. So, if you look at the trends, they typically do 384, followed by 256, followed by 192. That's how they did these two. Then when they went to Ampere, they changed it up a little bit. I don't know, they had like a weird, okay, like this one was 320. And then now the 40 series, they went further down. So like the 60 class was only like a 128. And that's the reason why at higher resolutions, this one is stronger than this one. Like 3060 handles the higher resolution a bit better than the 4060. Now the cop-out, the reason why the 4060 still appears like it's better is because of frame gen. The 4060 got the DLSS frame gen. The 3060 was denied that functionality. However, the 3060 can use AMD's frame generation and still get frame generation. So overall, like if you're somewhere down, if you're like in the 60 class series, the 4060 is complete utter garbage. Especially if you're trying to play games at 1440p, and the 3060 is actually holding itself better. It's aging better because of that. Now, the one thing is, you don't get your frame gen on your 3060, but you can use the AMD one. So, does that really matter? So, anyway, that's what I'll say on that. So now we come to the 50 series. So 50 series is completely different because for the first time, they're doing 512-bit. And we had this conversation a year ago, about a year ago. We had this conversation. I don't remember which stream it was, but it was definitely in Q1 of last year. We had the discussion about the leaks. Yeah, I remember. We had this discussion a year ago when the super cards were launching. Last year, in January of last year, we talked about the Super Series.
Bro, you gotta try out Dynasty Warriors Origins. It is insane. Best Mosu game ever.
Yeah, I've been playing Dynasty Warriors Origins throughout this week. It is good. It's pretty good. Now, my one thing I will say about it, I feel like Koei Tecmo missed the opportunity to do character creator because when you look at their games, so like Wolong Fallen Dynasty, Neo 2. I'm talking about the Team Ninja Studio, which is a different dev group within Koei Tecmo. But I know Omega Force is doing the Dynasty Warriors games. But what I will say is The only thing that annoys me about Dynasty Warriors Origins is the fact that you can't create your own character. You're stuck using a silent protagonist, and that's all you get, which I think is a missed opportunity, considering you can't really control the other characters. So it's like you're stuck using one character pretty much the entire playthrough. So at the very least, I personally think they should have had a character creator. It's kind of lame because it's like it's a single player game. You can't control the iconic characters fully. I don't know. Maybe they'll add that as DLC, like the ability to play as the other characters all the time. Maybe they'll do something like that. I can see them doing that over like adding character creator. I don't see them adding character creator. I think that's too much work post-launch. But it's a missed opportunity. I think that game would have been like a whole number higher on its score if it had character creator. Yeah. But anyway, but it's a good game though. The action is really good. It definitely fulfills that power fantasy of literally like standing on the battlefield and wiping out literally hundreds of enemies. Like, yeah, that part of it, they got that spot on. So I'll agree with that. So the 5080. So, okay, here's the thing. Last year, there was some leaked rumors about well, they didn't know if it was 5090 specifically or 5080 specifically, but there was this mystery supposed GPU. Well, let's go ahead and fill this out first. That was supposed to be a 448, but we'll get to that in a second. So this one is disappointingly, well, not disappointingly, it is expectedly a 256-bit bus. So that one is expected. Then there is RTX 5070, which I don't remember what this one is. Is this the 128? Or no, well, not 128, 192. Is this 192? I don't know. You guys will have to tell me. I don't know what this is. Like, I don't know anything about the 5070. What is the 5070? 5070? Oh, it doesn't even show up in the thing. Fantastic. RTX 50... Where is this thing? RTX 5070... 192. Okay, 192, which means the other one is going to be 128. Okay, so... These are basically copy-paste from 40 series in terms of the numbers. Nothing is different from the previous generation. And that might be why a lot of people are not as interested in the 5080 compared to the other GPU. However, Nvidia has left a super wide chasm between these two graphics cards. It's a massive gap between these two cards. One of them is 512, one of them is 256. That means that there could be the rumored GPU from last year that was a 448-bit. There is the potential for another GPU to exist that's between the 5090 and the 5080, because last year there were rumors circulating around about a 448. We'd talked about this. There was an entire section on one of the live streams from last year leading up to the 4080 Super launch. So it was January of last year, talking about this. George just subbed to the channel. Thanks for the sub. So there is a possibility that there will be a return. The return of... I was about to say the return of the Jedi or something. No, the return of the mighty 80 series Ti. The RTX 5080 Ti. So it's possible that it could show up like this, or there could be some kind of weird thing where they do the RTX 5080 Super 384, or I don't know what they're going to call it. Maybe they do TI 384, Then they do Ti Super 448. You know, like, basically, the point that I'm making is that Nvidia has left such a massive gap between the 5080, which is starting to look really lame and not very future-proof, for $1,000 or more. Typically, you're going to spend more than $1,000 for this. And this GPU, because this one is a measly 16 gigabytes. So you're paying over $1,000 for 16 gigabytes for the amount of RAM that you can get from a $280 AMD 7600 XT. Like, just talking like VRAM count. So, you know, like, that's kind of lame. But at the same time, the 5090 is so expensive at $2,000, which means, like, literally, if someone's gonna buy a 5090, they could have bought like two 5080s for the exact same amount of money. They could have literally got two for the price of one. But instead, they're buying one for the price of two, depending on how you look at it. See what I did there? So, I wouldn't be surprised if next year we get the return of the 80 Ti, because we haven't seen like an 80 Ti from Nvidia in a long time. The last time we had an 80 Ti was in the year of 2021, in the midst of the pandemic, in the middle of the dark times, and all the supply issues, all the crypto bros, everybody here that remembers that time. The year was 2021. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I call it the dark times. That was the year that, in March of that year, the 3080 Ti launched. And it was an LHR, and it was a terrible graphics card. However, it was an 80 Ti. So, and since then, it was so unpopular, Nvidia didn't bring it back. So I don't know. Maybe, hopefully, there's a chance that we will see a 5080 Ti with either a 384-bit or, as rumored last year, a 448-bit, which has never really been done before. I don't think we've ever seen that. So realistically, there's probably going to be a 384. I mean, why will there not be a 384 when, you know, like, they always do a 384, and there's such a massive gap between these two? Just saying. That's just somebody standing on the sidelines and using logical reasoning and pattern recognition to kind of like, I see a pattern here. I see, like, a pattern, you know? Like, I kind of expect certain things, and then Like, what happened? Combo breaker, what happened? Like, where's my 384-bit bus? You know, why'd that bus leave the stall? Like, what's going on here? You know what I'm saying? So I would not be surprised at all if in the latter half of this year we start seeing leaks and rumors of a 384-bit Nvidia card. So you don't need to know any about leaks. It's like, well, it's probably going to happen. So the point is, if you're somebody who, the reason why I'm saying all of this, if you're somebody who does not like the 5080 because it's, like, not powerful enough for 2025 for how much you spend and the amount of memory that it comes with, and you're also someone who is disenfranchised with how expensive, how stupidly expensive the 5090 is, and how it's just, like, you know, why are you going to spend this much money on this GPU? Like, especially if you don't have a 4K monitor. So if you're somebody who is sitting on the fence and you're like, man, 5090 is stupidly expensive, so it's retarded, it's for retards, and the 5080 is dumb because it has not enough RAM, and it's also kind of expensive, but it's weak, or it's going to become weak very fast. It's not going to age well. Like if you're of that opinion, and I guess the reviews will kind of prove all of these points in the coming weeks, then you're probably better off waiting. Hopefully you already have a 4090 or something to tie, or maybe you have a 3090 Ti, a 4080 Super, something like that. If you have something of that performance level, you're probably better off waiting. I'm just saying, like, you're probably better off waiting. There is such a massive gap. We know what they always do. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a 5080 Ti with a 384-bit bus, or maybe the rumored 448. I'd be very surprised to see that, but I kind of think that that's probably the smarter thing to do here. Because the reality is, if you're someone who really, really wants the 5090 or the 5080, well, definitely the 5090, because that one's going to be in shorter supply. What I'll say is, like, yeah, you can wait until the reviews, but realistically, if you're someone who wants the 5090, and you already hit all the criteria that was outlined on the previous stream, you're much better off attempting to try to buy one at launch. Otherwise, you're going to not be able to get one until April. You know, I'm just saying, like, it's going to sell out instantly. So regardless of whatever the reviewers say, it's going to sell out. We already know that. We already know how this is going to go down. But if you're someone on the fence and you don't want to spend $2,000+, you don't like the value proposition of the 5080 because it's weak, quote unquote, it's weak, then you should probably just wait, and you're not gonna miss out. I've been through all these hardware launches. You're not really gonna be missing anything if you don't buy either one of these GPUs. I'm just keeping it real. You can wait for the 5080 Ti, and you'll probably be more happy with the 5080 Ti than either of those GPUs, considering it's probably not going to cost anywhere near as much as a 5090, and it won't be quote-unquote weak because it'll have that flagship 384-bit bus, or maybe even a 448, but who knows? Only time will tell. Okay. So I guess that covers Nvidia. I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say about it. From a logical standpoint, like, I would not even consider the 5090 if I do not have a 4K monitor. And then for the 5080 is kind of a weird one because it's like, yeah, if I have a 1440p monitor, the 5080 is probably going to be very good for the next 3 years, but do I really need one if I already have a high-end GPU for 1440? That's where it's kind of like confusing. You know, that's where it's a little bit more than that. So it's not as straightforward. So let's discuss now the AMD cards. So AMD, this is another one that's this is actually more interesting than the Nvidia ones, because the Nvidia ones are very, very predictable. Okay, but AMD is very, very unpredictable. So let's talk about AMD. And Radeon, the AMD Radeon. What do you do if you're going to be on the rebel side? Fighting against the Galactic Empire. So, if you want to be a rebel. So, what do they have? They have the RX 7900 XTX, which is a 384-bit. Then they have an RX 7900 XT, which is a... Do you guys know what it is? Does anybody know what it is? Oh, and we're going to go further back in time on the AMD cards as well. Does anyone know what it is? It's 320. The hint was ampere, to use the ampere numbers. Then they have, we're going to skip the, should I do the GRE? Let's skip the GRE. Do we want to put this one in here? Do we want to include this? I don't even know what this one is. Like, what is this one? The GRE? GRE. Does this even show up in the database? Oh, it does. Oh, this one. Okay, yeah, this is a 256. Okay, then they had the RX 7800 XT. See, I don't like to include this one because this is like including some, I don't know. It's just gonna make the list really long. So this one is a this is, I think, 192 if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct on that? I don't want to be wrong on this. Like, but there are so many GPUs. It is so hard to keep. No, this is a 256 also. But this is a different die. And we didn't even talk about that with Nvidia. But we're not really going to talk about that with AMD. Maybe we should. That just introduces another level of complexity. This is the reason why I want to ignore this one. So you know what? I'm just going to remove this one because it's going to confuse people. So we'll just go down here, or should we include the 60? Should we include the 60? This is 128, I think. 7600 is, yeah, 128. Okay, so these are the AMD. Oh, hold on a second. Is this other one 192? No. Oh, okay. I was wrong. This is 192. Okay, so yeah, let's just do this. I don't want to put the GRE because GRE is going to confuse people because it's also 256, but it is also the same die as these. So, but maybe we should. It's just too many GPUs. So we're just going to do these because these are the original ones that were intended to be global market GPUs. The GRE was supposed to be a China exclusive. Then AMD opened it up to the international market, and it was kind of popular for a while. But anyway, so these are the AMD ones from Ep93, and then if we go back now, So now we're gonna see. We want to do the same thing. We want to see the logic in the what are the trends of the AMD cards? Like, is there a pattern? The RX 6900 XT was a 256-bit. The RX 6800 XT was a 256-bit. The RX 60... We'll skip the other one. We'll just do this one. Do I need to have that other one? Maybe I do need to have that other one, because now I have, like, 5 GPUs. Well... This one's not going to make much of a difference from the other one. So we'll just do this. Do they even have a 6600 XT? I know they had a 66... Oh, they did. Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, whatever. Okay. So, the AMD GPU so far, I'm noticing some stuff here. I'm noticing some patterns. Maybe I should just drop this down here so it aligns better. Or we'll just, whatever. We'll do this, we do this. Whatever, let's just do this. Then they had the RX 5700 XT, which was 256. The RX 5700, which was also, I believe that one was 256, although I need to look that one up because I don't remember. 5700 was also 256. And then they had the RX 5600 XT, which was probably 192 if I had to guess. Yeah, I was right. 192, and then I don't remember, I guess... Do they have the non-XT? This is why... Yeah, they didn't. They went to 55. So, this is why... Okay. One thing is... that I can already point out is... Was this even one... Hold on. 5500 XT. What is this? That was their 128. Okay. So, one thing that I'll point out about AMD. First of all, AMD it's harder to predict like what the GPU's intended resolution is if you only know the model name. Meaning, if I take, for example, the 6600 XT, this is a 192-bit, which means this is going to either be a low-end 1440p GPU or a good 1080p GPU. But I go look at the previous generation 5700 XT, which has the same 700 number. This is a 256, which means this implies that this is like a 1440p graphics card. But the next one up is not really a great 1440p graphics card long term because it's 192-bit. So that's the reason why like AMD is more like it's less predictable. They're more unpredictable than Nvidia. Like meaning you can't always look at an AMD GPU. Up until now, you can't just look at an AMD GPU and expect to immediately draw conclusions about what its intended resolution is unless you know other things about it, like how much memory it has, what the memory bus is, that kind of stuff. It's not as cut and dry as Nvidia. And this is fundamentally the reason why AMD is changing the name again. They're redoing the numbering scheme, although technically, to their credit, they have used the same numbering scheme for the last 3 generations now. So start RDNA 1, RDNA 2, RDNA 3. They've been consistent with their naming, at least from, the whole like XT versus non-XT and all this other stuff. Although that's kind of questionable, but not really, because like you look at the 7700 XT, for example, that is a 192. That lines up with the previous 6700 XT, which was also 192. So they are kind of consistent, at least from RDNA 2 to RDNA 3. Now you'll notice that AMD did not have a 384-bit bus on the previous 2 generations. So RDNA 1, RDNA 2, both of them maxed out at 256-bit. Which means AMD, not until the XTX, up until the XTX, AMD was only producing graphics cards that were capable of 1440p. Like the ideal resolution was 1440p. Technically, there were individuals, myself included, that at the time were using a 6900 XT and then proceeded to upgrade to a 4K monitor during this time. And sure enough, after upgrading to 4K, the 6900 XT all of a sudden felt weak in a lot of games. And that's because it is not designed for the 4K resolution. Even though I think AMD, if I remember correctly, AMD was kind of advertising that it was like a 4K GPU, but and it kind of was. Like, yeah, you can technically game at 4K with the 6900 XT in a lot of older games and a lot of new games that are not super graphical demanding. Like, you can totally play, like, I could totally play Genshin Impact at 4K maxed out with a 6900 XT at a solid, well, the game is capped at 60. Like, you can't increase the frame rate beyond 60 in that game. But, like, you're maxing it out, 60 FPS, 6900 XT, 4K, no problem. Same deal with, like, Star Rail and some of those other games, and Final Fantasy 14, for example. That's harder to run than Genshin. That's an MMO. I can play that game at 4K, max settings, native res, with a 6900 XT, no problem. So, even though that game got graphical updates and got hard to run over the years. So you can technically use it for 4K, but it is kind of what I refer to as entry-level 4K. It's not like high-end 4K, or not ideal for 4K. It wasn't until the 7900 XTX and the 7900 XT that AMD finally had decent graphics cards for 4K resolution. So now, what do we think is going to happen? Well, should we go further back? Because if we go further back in time, people are going to get very, very confused. Like if we go to, first of all, the names. Hold on. Maybe we should go further back. Yeah, let's go further back in time. This is going to confuse people, though. People are going to be like, what? Okay, let's put this down here. The previous generation. So this is pre-RDNA. This is GCN. This 4096. This is why I didn't want to go here. I don't really want to speak to these GPUs or talk about them, but these GPUs are very radically different GPUs. 2048-bit RX Vega 56. I don't even remember what this is. I think it's also this. So these GPUs were so radically different from everything else that it was just not even, like, you couldn't draw proper comparisons. Like, it was very hard to compare apples to apples in the GCN era. Because you look at a GPU, like you look at the Radeon 7, and you're like, wow, that thing has a 4096-bit bus. This thing should be able, like, that bus is so wide, it can game at 16K, no problem. But in reality, no, it couldn't even barely even game at, like, 1440p with, like, ultra settings for newer games. So, so this is why this is completely different. And the reason why these GPUs have this sort of memory interface is because they were not designed to use typical GDDR memory. They were designed to use another type of memory called high bandwidth memory, also known as HBM. HBM2 is what these graphics cards used, which is different. It is not the same as these. For example, the HBM2 on the Radeon 7 or the Vega 64, I'm trying to remember what the speed was. I think the memory clock was only like it might have been 1500. No, I don't even think it was that fast. I have to look it up. But what I can tell you, because I remember this other one, if we go further back, so, how should I, so RX, well, see, now we're going into the weird ones. So let's just do R9 Fury X with its 4096-bit bus and the R9 Fury with that 4096-bit bus. The memory on these graphics cards only runs at 500 megahertz. 500 megahertz. 500 megahertz paired up with this super wide interface. That is how they were able to compete with Nvidia's 980 Ti, the 980 Ti, and the 980 from like 2015, 2014. 2014 was 980, 2015 was these two plus 980 Ti. So the memory ran really slow and used almost no electricity at all, but it required a completely different design. So that's why I don't like to talk about these older AMD cards, because they confuse people. They confuse people because they're like radically different from your typical graphics card from all the other generations. Oh, and somewhere in here, probably around like here, between these two, between these two generations, there was a GPU that most people remember. It was a very famous GPU, the RX 480. Then later it got rebranded to the RX 580, and then there was also the 590. Yeah, R9 Nano was like in here, which was also 4096 bit, by the way. So this was actually a full die, so it's technically full die. Fury was cut down, but this thing was so power limited. This was like 175 watts. So the thing that I will say about, I assume this was that 250? Yeah, that was 256. So the thing I'll say about these rather strange AMD GPUs from like the mid 2010s decade, mid to late, so second half, 2015, 2017, and then like early 2019. This GPU probably should have never went to market, but it just somehow did. This is, so a fun fact about Radeon 7, a lot of people don't know this, but Radeon 7 is what you get when its designer, or its, I guess, like the company that made it, in this case AMD. Radeon 7 is an example of what happens when the company like takes what's supposed to be a canceled product and actually puts it out on the market just because they want to see what happens. Like, it's kind of like a Hail Mary. They're like, if anyone understands that expression, a Hail Mary, if anyone understands football, you know what I'm saying when I'm saying it. It was like a Hail Mary. They just kind of like threw the Radeon 7, the quarterback, who was the quarter? It wasn't Roger Cordori. He was like, you know, he was out the door. So like, I guess like, who was in charge of their, I don't even remember the guy based out of like Canada somewhere. He was the quarterback, and he was like, I'm just going to throw this Radeon 7 as far as I can and see where it goes. He just Hail Married that Radeon 7 out into the market. And you know who bought it up? All the crypto bros. This thing was so popular for cryptocurrency, man. You can still find people mining crypto. I don't know what they're mining now, but there's still people with Radeon 7s out there mining crypto. Radeon 7 was such a good graphics card for crypto. And it was so good for video editing. This was so good for video editing. Like, if you were editing 4K RAW in DaVinci Resolve, dude, Radeon 7 was so good. You know why? 16 GB. This thing had 16 GB of HBM. HBM2, 16 gigabyte. This thing had used like no electricity. This thing, the Radeon 7, idled at like 2 watts. Idle power was like 2 watts on this thing because the memory was so energy efficient. But you know what? That memory cost too much money, and AMD almost went bankrupt. But by that time that they put this thing out there, like Raja was out, you know, they were trying to figure out like, oh, let's restructure. We got Zen 2 out the door, and it was a real hit. Like, everyone loves it. So, you know, like, they're on the up and up after that. But Radeon 7, a lot of people don't know this. Radeon 7 was literally a Hail Mary. They literally threw it out there because they're like, well, we're kind of sinking. We're probably going to have to file for bankruptcy, but we'll see what happens. And then they somehow survived. It was like the biggest comeback ever in the history of PC enthusiast history. So anyway, and that was like a year before. That was like almost 2 years before the magical year. Well, not 2 years. I'm saying this thing launched. The Radeon 7 was 2/7/2019. It launched February 7th, 2019. So it was like super late. The 1080, to put things into perspective, the 1080 Ti was almost 2 years old at that point. The 1080 Ti was almost 2 years old. In fact, when the Radeon 7 entered the market, the 2080 Ti was already in the market. A lot of people don't even realize that. The Radeon 7 is younger than the 2080 Ti. The 1080 Ti, which was the intended competitor for the Radeon 7, was almost 2 years old. So when the Radeon 7 showed up, it was like, hey, I have HBM2 and I have 16 gigabytes and I'm $700. I am so good. But the problem was there was already 1080 Ti, which was like the same amount of money. It was almost 2 years old. It had less VRAM, but it was like whatever. And then there was 2080 Ti. Like, look at me, I'm ray tracing. Look at me, look at all my triangles. Look how shiny I am. RTX on, RTX on. No one cared. So it was like all the video editors, all the DaVinci Resolve enjoyers, all the crypto bros, all the Ethereum dogs, and the Bitcoin cats. They literally all just gobbled up Radeon 7. Radeon 7 was so phenomenal, but it was like so underrepresented. Like, and AMD only made like a few of them. So I was like, what? Okay, this thing was kind of like vaporware, but it's kind of funny because this thing has like its own little history. It had its own little history. So I just want to kind of call that one out. But the point is, the other thing too, one more thing before we wrap up this discussion about these massive, thick memory bus GPUs. These GPUs were the blueprint. They were the foundation for a technology known as X3D. X3D. And RDNA 3's quote unquote chiplet approach to GPUs. A lot of people don't realize that. But if it wasn't for Radeon 7 and Vega and the Fury X and the Nano that came before them, we would never have an X3D gaming CPU. We would never, and the XTX and the XT and the 7800 XT and the GRE and all those GPUs, except for this one down here, except for the 7600, these would not be using the MCMs and the GCM. Like, these GPUs would not be chiplet based if it wasn't for the thick boy GPUs from like 9 years ago at this point. 7 to 9 years ago, depending on which one you're looking at. So that was how they built up the technology. So it was through the time of the company potentially going bankrupt and no longer existing that they were able, from the ashes, they literally like rose. And that is how we got stuff like X3D and the chiplets on the XTX. So that's kind of like a full history lesson on like where these things came from and what their ancestors in technology were that enabled them to get to where they are. That's what these guys did. But anyway, the point, now let's go back to like where does that bring us to the 9070 XT, the 9070, the 9060 XT, etc. All those newer GPUs that are coming out this year. So those are definitely going to be a different approach. We got these, and then the next time we saw these type of GPUs, they showed up like this in 2022, because it takes about 5 years. The development cycle for this technology is about 5 years, half a decade. It takes a long time. So meanwhile, you have Monolithic. The Monolithic team was the team that brought us the RX 480. And then later, they brought the 5700 XT and this generation. So now it is time. It is time. Because if we look, let's do the math. What did I say a few moments ago? I said 5 years. It took 5 years to go from this, to bring the chiplets to the full potential. Now let's see what happens when the monolithic is given 5 years to go into the future. What do we get when the monolithic team brings its GPU to the forefront? The RX 9070 XT, the RX 9070, the RX, I guess they're calling these this, but I don't know when we're going to hear about those other ones, the RX 9060. So this is what they have. And I don't remember the bus. I'm going to assume this is like 256 because it's monolithic. And AMD can scale up to 256 on a monolithic until the end of next year, which that's kind of a secret, but we won't talk about that right now. That's neither here nor there. So the 256-bit is what I will expect, although maybe I'm wrong, but we can look it up. But basically, you can basically look at the pattern. What did we get? What did we get in 2017? Minus this guy, because he's supposed to be a project that was never supposed to go to the market. So what did we get in 2017? Add 5 years. That would put you at 2022. What launched in 2022? Now let's do some more math. 2019. What launched in 2019? Add 5 years. Technically, okay, if you do the math, it's like, oh, hold on a second. 5 years, that would have been 2024. So is it delayed? The answer is yes, it was delayed for some reason. But these things are ready to go. You put that 5 years forward, and technically this was like the middle of 2019. So it's kind of like, what, 5.5 years at this point? So it's running a little behind schedule, I would say, but based off of previous trends, patterns, but, you know, that's how it works. And the reason why you can use these trends and patterns to predict when these things are going to launch is because we're talking about publicly traded companies here. We're talking about companies that have to answer to their shareholders. They have to put products out. They cannot be like, oh, we have to delay it another year. Oh, we need another year. No, that's an excuse because they have to get a product out. Now, when Jack Ma, was it Jack Ma? Who's the name of the guy at AMD? Did I just say the wrong name? It's Jack Ma, right? The guy at AMD who presented at CES. When that guy said in the interview last year that they're going to double down on their efforts, so don't expect them to compete at the ultra enthusiast high end, at least not in the next generation. A lot of people misinterpreted what he said. A lot of people seem to think that, oh, he's not going to, yeah, when he said that they're going to not compete at the ultra high end, that doesn't mean that they're not going to make an ultra high end GPU. So I think people misinterpreted. Basically, what he's setting the expectations for the GPU that the monolithic team is putting out. Whatever team designed that kind of stuff, this, they're now tasked with this. Like, that's the roadmap. So he's setting the expectations appropriately. Now, for the super ultra high end, for the enthusiasts that are wanting like a 4K, you know, max RT, all this stuff, give me that frame gen. The people who are on something like this, they're going to have to skip. They're going to have to wait for the next generation. Unless they're like, I don't know, at 1440p and they're on like a lower end GPU, like they're on one of these GPUs, or they're on an older GPU or a really older GPU. You know, those people are probably going to be looking at these 9000 series GPUs. So, what we're going to see, what I expect to see at least, is something very similar to what we saw in 2019. This is going to be a repeat of 2019. We're going to see a good graphics card that offers great value with a 256-bit bus, which means if you have a 1440p monitor, this will probably be the best value choice for 1440p. Technically, you can use it with 4K, just like how people who bought the 6900 XT paired it up with 4K. I did that, although I started with this and then went to 4K and then was like, oh, now I'm GPU bottleneck. So you can use this GPU with 4K. I don't really know if I'm going to recommend that for 4K. I think there's better options. But we'll see like what besides the new architecture is being offered here. Like, this will be the first GPU from AMD that has the dedicated machine learning, the dedicated hardware that can do the machine learning algorithm for its upscaler. And that is a first for this generation of Radeon cards. So it's almost like I said, it is a return to 2019. What launched in 2019? RDNA 1. Then we had RDNA 2. Then we had RDNA 3. Now RDNA 4. But what was unique about RDNA 1? RDNA 1 was the reset point. It was the reset point. They pressed the reset button, got rid of all these thick GPUs, got rid of all these other thick GPUs, got rid of all these like skinny twig GPUs that were like super good value but people like underappreciated them. They got rid of all this stuff, put some new modern GPUs that were competitive in rasterization, and in fact they even kind of like exceeded their rival in pure rasterization. So that's probably what we're going to see. We're going to see a GPU launch that is very similar to the 5000 series from 2019. It is basically a reset. When I say reset, in this generation from 3 to 4, the reset is from the aspect or from the point of view of the machine learning and the upscaler. So AMD is basically resetting now to the point where they actually now will offer the machine learning based upscaler and a newer way to do these sort of things. Like it's going to be radically different from how it has been done with the previous GPUs. So that is what we will see. Because if you remember, going from this to this was radically different. They didn't need to build a 2048-bit bus to compete with a GTX 1080. They no longer needed to do that. They were back to building more normal GPUs with much more affordable memory options for them to use to manufacture a GPU. But in this case, they went back to GDDR instead of using the expensive HBM2 for the flagship stuff, for the high-end GPUs. So what that means is, notice there's some gaps. Notice that here, this capped out at a 700. Well, guess what? This is going to cap out at a 70 tier. There's going to be no 800. There's going to be no 80. There's going to be no 90 or no 900. They're not going to do that this time around. So if you're wanting these type of GPUs with the big 384-bit bus, you're going to be waiting until the fall of next year. So that's a little less than 2 years out from now. So that's a long wait. If you're someone who's holding out for like a super high-end enthusiast GPU from Team Red. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at with the GPUs. I think out of all of them, so comparing the RTX 50 and the RDNA 4 GPUs, ultimately I think the RDNA 4 GPUs are going to be more interesting. From purely like, what are they bringing to the table this time? I think the RDNA 4 GPUs are going to be more novel, like going to have more unique things to look at because of the machine learning approach that they're going to be capable of. Whereas with Nvidia cards, the 50 series is basically like everything except for the 5090 is a rehash of last generation. As far as I'm concerned, it's like, okay, it's like everything's the same except the newer cards have that multi-frame gen. That's like the one thing that it has. So, ray tracing, Radeon users want to turn on ray tracing. That remains to be seen. Ray tracing, yeah, like, I guess that's another talking point for the new AMD cards. Yeah, they're going to have significantly better ray tracing. But what that actually means for gaming at like 1440p, I don't know. We'll see. So, when you draw it out like this, you look at the history, you look at the timeline, the continuum of the technology of all these products, these different generations of GPUs, it becomes very clear what is going to happen. Like it's pretty clear like what we're going to see or what we expect to see. Without any leaks, without any benchmarks, without any reviews, no specs, just what has already been revealed from CES. We can already conclude that this is going to be like a 5000 series launch from 2019. So I expect that these GPUs will be more energy efficient than RDNA 3, just like how the 5000 series was way more energy efficient than the last generation of GCN. Because, you know, like you're going to look, it's like when everyone was looking at this, they were like, oh, how does it compare to Vega? Well, these were faster than Vega, and they were like half the electricity of Vega. So I don't think these are going to be like half the electricity of these GPUs, but for the performance tier that AMD is targeting, I think they're going to be more efficient. They're going to be better performing at lower power. And I don't know what the Nvidia GPUs will do. I think the Nvidia GPUs are probably going to either be exactly the same in terms of their energy efficiency. The TDP numbers that Nvidia has advertised are not really anything to rave about. It's pretty much the same. Like, I'm a little concerned about that 575 watt. I personally think that Nvidia is over-reporting their power consumption number, or their TBP number. I don't think that the 5090 is actually going to use 575 watts. I think it's going to use more like 375 watts. Maybe 400, maybe 410, somewhere around there, but we'll see. But yeah, I think it's going to pretty much be the same as the 4090 in terms of the power consumption for that GPU. 9070 XT has 3 8-pins. Do we know anything about that? Like, AMD hasn't done any TDP numbers, have they? I don't think there's been any TDP numbers reported. I think 9070 XT is going to be like 300 watts. 290 to 310, somewhere around there. So we'll call it 300 watts. Which means it uses less power than the XTX. Significantly less. I wouldn't be surprised if 9070 XT pulls power similar to a GRE or a 7900 XT. If it's 7900 XT, then and it performs about the same, then I don't know. If they're doing triple 8-pin on it though, like that to me is interesting because like you look at the AIB cards on the Nvidia stuff, some of those things are going to pull an insane amount of power because the AIB partner is going to tune the BIOS to do that. I don't think Nvidia's Founders Edition is going to do that because it's too small. So I think the Founders Edition is probably going to be more power limited, or it's going to thermal throttle a lot quicker. Like its boost algorithm is not going to be nearly as aggressive as the AIB cards because you look at that cooler, it's like, yeah, it's a really cool engineering feat, but seriously, like that little rinky-dink 2-slot air cool. Now I know it's thicker than a normal 2-slot, or it's taller than a normal 2-slot. 575 watts is close to 600 watts. Like, if anybody has actually tried to run a GPU at 600 watts, you know how much heat it can output. That small little 2-slot cooler, I wouldn't trust that thing. I don't care how much liquid metal they put on that. I don't care how they did their 3D vapor chamber stuff. The fact is, the thing is too small to dissipate 575 watts of heat or waste heat for like 5 hours. Like when, you know, because we've done these gaming live streams on the weekend where I'll literally stream for like 5 hours playing games. I can't see myself using the 5090 with that 2-slot cooler for 5 hours with uncapped frame rates. That thing's going to probably either have a very short lifespan, or it's going to thermal throttle like really quick, or it's just not going to boost that high. Like, it's not going to pull that much power. So I'm pretty sure, even though I don't know why they put that number, because I don't think it's going to pull that much power under load. So, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I don't know what you mean by Furmark, because I don't run Furmark on any of my GPUs. So I have no idea what any of them do when I run like if someone runs Furmark on them. But yeah, I don't even know how real world that even is. Like that, like no one actually uses Furmark. That's not representative of an actual game. So like what I want to see is like how much power it pulls, like when playing Monster Hunter or something like that. All right, so the last thing, let's see here. Oh yeah, the frame gen thing, yeah. So Nvidia announces, well, do we need to talk about this? I think we talked about this last time. Nvidia announces DLSS Multiframe Gen support for 75 games. Yeah, actually they announced this already. So this is kind of old news, but they're basically doing, like, these are the games, you can see some of them on here. Dragon Age the Veilguard, Naraka, Cyberpunk, Star Wars Outlaws, Hogwarts Legacy. I'm surprised to see Hogwarts Legacy because that game is coming up on like 2 years old and it's a single player game. I'm surprised the developers are still going back and like adding stuff to it like this. Indiana Jones, Diablo 4 for some reason is getting DLSS 4. I don't know why that game would need that. But anyway, it's getting it. That's interesting. Unfortunately, none of the games that I play are even on this list. So, like, looking at this list, just Senua, I've never played it. God of War Ragnarok, I've never played it. Diablo 4, Dragon Age, I haven't played any of these games. Like, I see Lords of the Fallen in the back over there. So there's one game, Lords of the Fallen. Like, literally one game. There's, like, one game that I play. I mean, I haven't played it in a while. That's like the only game on this list. Like, is Black Myth Wukong on here? Like, what else is getting this wonderful DLSS 4 multi-frame gen. Just, like, this is all the more reason why I shouldn't even bother upgrading. Like, this has, like, nothing. There's, like, Lords of the Fallen, really? That's it? This is, like, terrible. So, like, this list is just awful. So, oh, here's the full list. Okay, I don't recognize any of these. Oh, Dynasty Warriors Origins is on the list? There's one. Okay, Dynasty Warriors Origins. That's a new game that's coming out. That literally just came out. I mean, Hogwarts Legacy is almost 2 years old. I can technically fire that up and see how that runs. So there's 2 games. Lords of the Fallen, there's 3 games. Marvel Rivals is getting DLSS 4. That's interesting. Now, that is a game that I have played. So, I mean, I guess. That's a multiplayer game. So, that's pretty much it from what... Oh, Jedi Survivor. Okay, Jedi Survivor. Silent Hill 2. Okay, that's good. So, we're at 6 games now. 6 games on this list. So 6 out of 75 have DLSS 4 that I actually play or have played. So yeah. So I mean, you know, whatever. Eventually they'll add more, but that's kind of like, for me, it's kind of a letdown. I don't see a lot of the games that I play on here, so it's kind of like, the one that's very surprising, though, is Hogwarts Legacy, because that game is a single-player game that's almost 2 years old. So it's very interesting. You know, it's hats off to the development team on that game for going back and adding that. I was not expecting that, but that's cool. So Star Wars Jedi Survivor is also almost 2 years old. That'll be 2 years old, I think, in April or May. So, yeah, I mean, some of these other ones, like Dynasty Wars is the only new one. Lords of the Fallen is like a year and a half old. That's a UE5 game. Lords of the Fallen is one of the earlier UE5 games, so it was like very hard to run when it first came out. But it has gotten a lot of like updates over the year. Over the last like year, it's gotten a whole bunch of patches. So it actually runs a whole lot better than it did at launch. So that's another one definitely worth revisiting. So, yeah, but a lot of these other games, like, I don't play these other games, so it's like, yeah, okay. So for me, it would be more like, oh, I gotta wait and see if they come out with newer games or that use this stuff, or like hope that they patch more, add DLSS 4 to some older games. Path of Exile's not in here. No, I don't see it. No, there's only 2 games to start with P. PAX Day and PAX Day. PAX Day is getting DLSS 4. Payday 3 too. That's like an older. Well, I forget when Payday 3 came out, but I haven't played that. I played like Payday 2, but I've never played Payday 3. Anyway, so that's kind of that. I mean, we're only what, like 2 weeks away from that, and then I don't know when AMD's gonna announce more on the 9000 series. Let's see, what else is there? Like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming to PC this month. That's not getting DLSS 4 to my knowledge, at least. Although Square Enix, like, it takes them forever to figure out how to do stuff like that. I even think they have to hire a third party to do it because I don't think they know how to do it themselves. Let's see. Nvidia's 5090D to feature restricted AI and crypto mining performance. I don't know who's using a 5090 to mine. Well, I don't know who would use a 5090 to mine crypto, because it's like, that's That's not the way to do crypto at a scalable fashion. Just saying. AMD's Threadripper. Now, here's something that's interesting. Okay, this is the first I've heard of this. Threadripper 9000. Shimada Peak. 64 core and 32 core. SKUs spotted in shipping manifest. Oh, this looks like it's the Pro. Like, is this Pro series? What I want to see them do, you know what would be really cool? I want to see AMD make a Threadripper with X3D. Like, I want to see X3D on Threadripper. That would be really cool. Like, they're doing cool stuff like Strix Halo, and they've already done the X3D on consumer desktop. It would be amazing to see a Threadripper with an X3D variant. Like, that would be really interesting. Because these CPUs are really, really good for, like, virtual machines. But if somebody wanted, like, the lowest end Threadripper, and they wanted to do literally, like, any task you could think of for the computer, whether it's gaming, streaming, content creation, video editing, like animation work, virtual machines doesn't really need X3D, but, you know, like, just basically anything you could think of, a Threadripper with X3 would be very impressive. That would be really cool if they did that. I don't know if they will. I think they have something like that in the Epic line already. But yeah, man, Threadripper is really good. I fixed mine, like, in that video, and I have not had any problems with it. In fact, I can check right now. Let me see, is it... Yeah. Do I have the camera hooked up? No, it fell. Hold on. Here, let me see. Let's look at the... Well, the camera's not angled correctly, but you can see, like, the dashboard. My dashboard, ever since I did the thing that I did in the video, it works fine. I've never had any problems with it. There you can see the dashboard displaying all the hardware info, CPU temperature, all that stuff. I've had no problems. I don't know what a lot of people are doing, though. To be honest, I wonder if unstable RAM has anything to do with the display going out of whack. Because the only time I ran into that problem was when I was trying to make that video for 192 gigabytes of RAM at 6,000. And the first time I booted it up, it was not stable. I had to change something in there. Like, I had to up my voltage or something. I did something in there to get it to run stable. But it was when it was doing the memory training for that much RAM that the display started messing up. Then I had to do the whole, like, fix that people were talking about. Like, do the update data. I did the update data thing, and that fixed it for me. Basically, everything that I show in the video is what I did, and that fixed it. So since that time, I have never ran into a problem with the Godlike's display. Like, it's worked perfectly for me after doing that. So, yeah, I'm aware that there's a lot of people having a problem. I don't know what other people are doing, though. Like, the thing is, I'm running 4 sticks of RAM, and it's stable. So, and when my RAM was not stable was when I saw the problem. So, I don't know, man. I think there might be some people out there that are running, like, unstable memory or something, and they do the fix, and then it fixes the problem for a while, but then the memory's still not 100% stable. So, guess what? After a few days, the problem starts happening again. But for me, my computer is 100% rock stable, and everything's working. 4 sticks of DDR5 at 6400, and it's 100% stable. So, and my dashboard's working totally fine. So, I'll just let that speak for itself. But yeah, Threadripper with X3D would be really interesting. So here's hoping that AMD puts like some kind of X3D option for Threadripper this year or whatever, whenever they plan to bring this stuff out. But yeah, we're kind of due for a Threadripper upgrade this year because it'll be at the 2-year mark in the second half of this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more leaks about Threadripper 9000 series. But I think what would really make it compelling is if they do like an X3D variant. And the nice thing about it is you don't have to upgrade the motherboard. You just keep the exact same motherboard. Just update the BIOS and just put the new Threadripper in there just like any other Ryzen, and that's it. I'm not interested in the 64 or 32 core. That's like way too many cores. That's going to be like stupidly expensive. I want to see them do... So apparently there's a 16 core. I don't want the 16 core. I want like a 24 core. Yeah, what is this? 32 core, 64 core, 96 core, 16 core. 16 core sounds like a Pro. Like that's the Pro. Threadripper Pro goes from 16 core all the way up to 96 core. So this could be the Pro series, but who knows what they're going to do. I don't know. I like the 24 core. Like I wouldn't get if all they're gonna do is 16 core and like 16, 32, 96 or 64, 96. I'm gonna skip this because it's like I don't like if I'm using a 16 core 9950X or 50X3D, like I don't see the point of a 16 core Threadripper because you're not getting a core count or a thread count improvement over regular Ryzen. The only benefit is you're getting more PCIe lanes and you're getting quad channel memory. So quad channel memory can make a big difference if your apps or your games are actually memory bandwidth limited. So, but still, like I still want a core count improvement if I'm going to be on Threadripper. So for me, I really want them to do like a 24 core. I think that's the right choice. Because the more cores they have, the more they have to divide the power budget across all those cores. So it's a balancing act. Like you want more cores than Ryzen, but you want a low amount of cores where you're still going to get good boost scaling. So I found that 24 cores is actually a really good choice. 24 core, 48 thread, kind of like Intel's like 14900K. That thing is technically 24 cores. Now, obviously, they're not all the same core type. It's a mix of big and little. And Threadripper is like all big cores by comparisons. And all the Threadripper cores do SMT. So it's like you're talking 48 threads with a 24 core Threadripper, whereas with Intel, I think you're doing what 32 thread because those E cores can't handle dual thread. So and it's even worse if you're on the new Intel Core Ultra because those P cores basically got neutered and lost their ability to do hyperthreading. So it's like they only have like one arm. I think of a CPU. A CPU that has SMT or hyperthreading is a CPU that has two hands. Like it can pick up two tasks. It can do two things. Whereas an E core is a CPU that was born with only one hand. Or if it had two hands, Intel chopped off one hand at the factory, so it only has one hand. So it can only pick up like one task at a time. So fast forward to Intel's Core Ultra. The Core Ultra only has like one hand on all the cores, including the P cores. Now the difference is the size of the hand is larger than before, so it can pick up more per hand, but it's still not going to be the same as like having two hands. See what I'm saying? So E-core only has two fingers. No, it doesn't have two fingers. It has one hand. Two fingers is a thing that is a technical term for describing graphics cards, not CPUs. Yeah, that gaming mode thing is a pointless gimmick. It doesn't do anything. It's like not worth it. You would, let's put it this way. If you're buying a 16 core CPU with 32 threads, you're going to be using the 16 cores, 32 threads. Otherwise, you shouldn't buy a 16 core, 32 thread CPU. You're literally wasting money. So, no. If I'm going to buy a 9950X, I'm going to use all the cores. I want the cores to be on all the time. So, no, that has nothing to do with core parking. We're not talking about core parking. Core parking is a power saving feature. That has nothing to do with what that gaming mode thing is. No, that's completely different. 16 cores, so minimum 64. Yes, correct. Correct. When I built my 7950X back in 2022, what did I use with it? 64 gigabytes of DDR5. Back then, 64 gigabytes of DDR5 was very, very expensive. Yeah, the 8-core CPU is good enough for most people. Like, the only time you're going to actually need, like, the second CCD is if you're actually doing a whole bunch of weird multi-threading things with your... Like, let's put it this way. If you're somebody who doesn't know, like, what you would use all those cores for, then you probably don't need a 16-core CPU. Because the people who need the 16-core CPU, they already know what they're going to use the cores with. They already know how their app is going to scale with those cores. If you're having to think about it, then you probably don't need a 16-core CPU. Most people don't need more than an 8-core CPU. Especially now, since a lot, like, more and more, the graphics card is becoming more, it's like the key component now for a lot of these newer apps. So, like, even video editing. Like, the GPU makes a bigger difference. Well, the CPU does make a difference, but the GPU does so much of the acceleration now that, you know, the CPU plays less and less of an important role. Also, you can get away with less RAM if you have a smaller CPU. As somebody pointed out earlier. As Min had pointed out, like 16 core, minimum 64. Yeah, it's 4 times the number of cores. Four gigabytes of RAM per physical core. So technically, you know what that means? And I built those computers correctly also. That means that if someone is using a 14900K or a Intel Core Ultra, well, let's just use the 14900K as an example. If someone's using a 14900K, technically, they should be using 96 gigabytes of RAM. Let that sink in.
Will 9950X3D help generate naughty AI pictures faster with the 5090 as compared to my 9800X3D?
I don't think it will. I think the GPU will make the biggest difference there. So the GPU will play the biggest role in image generation, not the CPU. The only time the CPU will help is if your GPU is just really, really weak. Like, when I say really, really weak, I'm talking like integrated graphics weak. So, yeah. So to your point, I don't think the 9950X3D is going to be faster at generating images, AI images, versus the 9800X3D. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't think so. I think that the GPU makes the biggest difference, though. Now, that being said, because you said with 5090, if you don't have the GPU, so if you strictly are using the CPU to generate images, just 100% on the CPU by itself, the answer is yes. The 9950X3D will be significantly faster than the 9800X3D at generating AI pictures. This assumes you're using only the CPU to generate the CPU cores to generate the image. The moment you use the GPU, the moment you add the GPU to the equation, CPU doesn't matter. The CPU doesn't matter. You can have both CPUs, two different computers, both with 5090s. The time it takes to generate the image will be basically the same, because the 5090 will just handle 99% of the load. Dripping with the super chat. Appreciate it. Let's see, what else? Is it true that for the new Ryzen 6000, this is, or one of the new better option compared to no, not really. Not necessarily. So let's put it this way. Those memory kits that you're referring to are only better if you have a lower end motherboard. Like if you have a B650 motherboard or a B850 motherboard, then I can see those memory kits making sense, because if you're running a lower end motherboard, the chances are you can't run 8000 or above on the RAM, because the motherboard is the limiting factor when you try to push the memory to higher speeds, not the CPU. So if you have a higher end motherboard, then you're actually better off with higher speed memory versus the like 6000 CL28 or whatever. And the reason why that is because if you're running your RAM at the... So when you run the memory at like CAS latency of 28 or 26, these ridiculously tight timings, that's going to require higher voltage on the RAM. So that means you have to run the VDD, the VDDQ, maybe the VDDIO, and possibly the memory controller voltage. So like the VSOC voltage will probably have to be higher than 1.2 volts, if not 1.2 volts. So what that means is that your CPU, when idling, will use more electricity. So your CPU will run hotter when idling, and it just uses more power. It might not necessarily run hotter, depending on the cooling, but it will use more electricity at idle when you run like very tight timing RAM with higher voltages. But it's going to depend on whether or not you have to use the higher voltages. Now, flip side of that, you run the memory at 8000 or above. Guess what? At 8000, DDR5 8000, like CL40 or CL38 or whatever, you don't need to run the memory controller above 1.2 volts. In fact, you can go lower than 1.2 volts. You can do like 1.18 on VSOC at 8000 or 8200. So the benefit of running the higher speed RAM is you get the higher memory bandwidth, and you get lower idle power consumption. And no one really talks about that. So I personally prefer, now it depends on like how much memory I'm using, what kind of memory I'm using. I personally prefer, like if I had to choose, I would go 8000 over 6000, like at some ridiculous latency.
Last week I asked you about the 5.0 riser cable. Found the Haven HS420 case has a vertical 5.0 riser cable.
Okay, well that's good to know, because I didn't know that, and I know a lot of people here probably didn't know that either, so thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, we will see more 5.0 riser cables come out throughout this year though, so that's one of the earlier ones. But because we're starting to move into the era of PCI Gen 5 graphics cards, I would expect as time goes by, naturally we're going to start seeing more cases and more hardware vendors offer 5.0 certified cables, riser cables. So but thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, that's very good information. I mean, there's probably people here that were probably thinking of doing a vertical mount with a riser cable, and now they know that there's an option without having to wait until the second half of this year. No, not necessarily. You have to check on the manufacturer's website whether or not it's like a fake one or not. I would assume if it's with a case, like if it's with a legit case, and the manufacturer is advertising 5.0 riser cable, it's probably a real one. What's sketchy is if you try to buy a riser cable separate, like from a vendor that's selling it really, really cheap, especially if it's selling for really, really cheap. And they're advertising it as 5.0 because realistically, there's going to be some retimer hardware that's required on the base circuit board where so basically where you plug it in to the motherboard, there's going to have to be some retimers, some redrivers on the board of the cable that plugs into the motherboard. On the same time, at the same end where the GPU plugs in, there also has to be redrivers and retimers. So I would imagine that a real 5.0 riser cable is going to be more expensive to produce than the older ones because it has to maintain the signal integrity that is required for Gen 5. This is one of the reasons why Gen 5 motherboards cost more money than the ones that don't do Gen 5. It's because they have to literally put more circuitry physically on the motherboard to maintain the speed that Gen 5 is capable of. But yeah, as it was pointed out in the chat, and we talked about this in a previous stream, I think the last one, we cannot verify the 5.0 until 5.0 GPUs are on the market. So it's like someone can advertise it as 5.0, but no one's going to be able to prove them right or wrong until there are 5.0 GPUs. So that's the only thing. So technically, I feel like if someone's really, really wanting to get one of those ahead of time, you really have to do some research on that, because that trying to get a 5.0 riser cable is literally the prime example of somebody living on the bleeding edge of technology. That is living on the edge of technology, because like there's literally no way for you to verify it. That's how bleeding edge it is. It says it's 5.0, but there's no way to prove, at least today, there's no way to prove if that's true or not. Doesn't the FE card this year come with the what? You're talking about a riser cable? No, what? No. Oh, you're talking about the FE card. Yeah. Yes, it has to be. And that's where I'm a little weary about the Founders Edition card. Because that card, I don't know, that there's a lot of risk involved with producing the card the way they did. Like, there's a lot of... It can be prone to having problems, is what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying that it has problems, because that remains to be seen, but the more you try to make, like, something compact like that, and the circuit board has all the components so close together, and they all generate heat, and then on top of that, you have to do the riser cable. You literally have a riser cable on the Founders Edition card. It's a tiny one, but it's there, with a proprietary connector on the back of the PCB to connect the PCIe interface to the GPU itself. That could be prone to failure. And the other thing I'm concerned about that is, like, what happens if what happens if somebody mounts it vertical, or if someone mounts it upside down, and because the connection for the PCIe is on the back side of the PCB. Like, the connection for the riser cable in the Founders Edition card that connects the PCIe pins to the circuit board where the GPU is, like, that's going to have a lot of wear and tear from temperature cycling, let's say. Like, when the GPU heats up, and then it cools down, then it heats up and it cools down. Like, I assume Nvidia has done a lot of internal testing on that, but I'm thinking like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years even, maybe 5 years. Like, if someone's going to keep that graphics card for a very long time, like more than one GPU generation, meaning they're going to skip the 60 series and they're just going to keep the 5090 no matter like how much better the 6090 is, how is that thing going to perform like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? You know, like, that's where my concern is with the Founders Edition, because they've never built the card the way they did, where it's all this modular stuff, and it's so compact, and that just, I don't know. I have a little concerns about like how that will perform long term in terms of reliability. But we'll see. I don't know. If you're someone who is a little anxious about that, then definitely try to get one of the AIB cards because those have the tried and true design. You know what to expect. You don't have to, yeah. You don't have to worry about the riser cable inside having a flaw or a defect or something where sometimes it shows up as Gen 4, other times it shows up as Gen 5. I wouldn't be surprised if there's motherboards that have like auto negotiation problems with the riser, and it's like, oh, the motherboard's like, well, you're on the edge of signal clarity, so we're gonna go ahead and run you at Gen 4 anyway. You know, like I wouldn't be surprised if motherboards do that. But we'll see. I don't know. That's a lot of connectors, and Gen 5 is like very, very strict in terms of its implementation. So we'll see. We'll see how it runs. Don't expect to overclock the Founders Edition, though. The 5090 Founders Edition, we can't. That's not going to overclock. Not 500 plus watts with a 2-slot. Man, that 2-slot looks like it's only good for like 350 watts, if I'm being honest. So, but I don't expect the Founders Edition to pull that much power. I think it's going to be like 300 something watts. Maybe 410, 425. Basically the same amount of power as the Founders Edition 4090. So I don't know why they're doing like, oh, it's 575 watts. I don't think it's actually going to do 575 watts. Now, if you overclock it, yes. But I would definitely not overclock a Founders Edition. That is a disaster waiting to happen. If you water cool it, then why does it matter? You're not gonna. But so like, who wants to water cool a Founders Edition? Like, you really want to tear that thing apart with all the random 3-4 different PCBs and the riser cable and all that stuff? That is the worst choice if you want to do custom water cooling on a 5090. Just saying. Like, that's turning on hard mode for no reason. FE has 3 different PCB placement. I know. So who wants to water cool that? Who wants to put a water block? Who wants to disassemble that thing and then put a water block? And it depends on how the water, like how the actual water block is designed to be compatible with housing all those different components. Like, to me, that's just too much effort. That is not the card to get if you're going to tear it apart to liquid cool. You know, like if EK or somebody wants to do a water block for 5090s, they need to really do that for the cheapest ones. The right way to do it is to partner directly with the AIB. Like they could partner up with MSI or somebody and do their own custom block for the GPU, for the PCB from the partner. Not Nvidia. Like, that's not who you go to. The FE is not the one to choose for that sort of application. The right choice would like, if it was me, I would probably, like, if I had to choose, if I was at EK and I'm like, okay, I got to decide like who I'm gonna make water blocks for, I would pick the cheapest 5090s, like the Ventus from MSI, the Asus TUF, the like all the ones that don't have all the RGB and are not super overpriced. Like those, you know why? Because those are the ones that the owner of those cards are probably more okay with taking those cards apart, disassembling them, and then putting the water block on manually. So there's probably going to be no water block for the FE card. I would not be surprised at all if there is literally 0 water blocks for that card. Okay, so let's do one final poll, and then we're probably going to end the stream. This one will be a more serious one than the random, like, who's buying a 5090. Although, it's kind of like a who's buying a 5090 question. So this one is going to be... Hold on. Is this a voting thing? I guess it is a voting thing. Which AIB... Or, okay, which Which, I guess, which vendor, no, not vendor, like, I guess it is a vendor, like, which AIB, or let's just say, which version of the 50, no, I don't have enough choices for that. I can only do, like, 4 choices. So it's like, which brand 5090 are you getting? And the choices are going to be Asus, MSI, wait, we did this last time, didn't we? I think we did this, and I excluded the brands that make GPUs for both GeForce and Radeon. So I can't do all of them, but this time I want to include those. So we'll do this. Well, I wish I could do a poll that had more than 4 choices, though, because this is not how I want to do this. Because I can't include all of them. Like, I want to put Zotac in there. Okay, if you had to choose between these... Okay. This is what I did. I'm just gonna do it this way. I lumped Zotac and PNY together, so they could be included. I could only do 4 choices. I wanted to do like a none, but I couldn't do it, so I had to put them together. I put Zotac and PNY together. Okay, so let's see what people are gonna say here. Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, or Zotac, PNY. Keep in mind, Zotac and PNY are 2 separate companies. I just kind of grouped them together because I didn't have enough room. Yeah, PNY does kind of deserve its own, but so does Zotac. Man, Asus is winning. Despite all the controversy surrounding Asus last year, there's still a lot of people that are willing to buy Asus. Because I've seen a lot of comments in my videos, in the comment section of some of my videos about like, oh, I'm tired of the Asus drama, I'll never buy Asus, or blah blah blah, or da, da, da. Well, it looks like there's a bunch of people here that are proving those statements wrong. %46%. Man, Asus is almost at half. Asus is almost at half. Man, poor Gigabyte. Why is Gigabyte way back? And Zotac and MSI by itself is beating Zotac and PNY combined. Literally, Zotac and PNY teamed up and they're losing to MSI. I might as well have put Gigabyte in with Zotac. Well, then people probably might not want to vote for those. So I don't know. Like, I'm not saying Gigabyte's bad or anything, but I don't know. Like, Gigabyte's like at 9% right now. Gigabyte is at 9%. I can't believe that. Wow. Man, I did not expect Gigabyte to be. You know what's interesting? These polls are done just casually, but this is like precious market research for these companies. I'm literally doing like free market research for these people, and they don't send me. Maybe they want to send me some review samples. I don't know. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is literally secrets revealed right here. This is secrets revealed. Asus is still the top. No matter what the media said, no matter what the reviewers said, all the controversy, all that stuff, still winning. They're still winning. Although I will say MSI is giving them a run for their money. MSI is putting up a decent fight. I'm impressed that MSI by itself is defeating Zotac and PNY. Like, not even just Zotac. PNY is there too, and it's losing. Gigabyte is breaking over 10% now. Wow, it's at 11%. It went up. It went up. 37 votes.
For those cards with a back fan, would my heatsink get in the way if I am using air cooling? I am using Noctua D15S.
Oh, if you're using, yeah, hold on. If you are using a Noctua, you need to be careful about that. Yeah, I'm not sure if the like for example, the Gigabyte. So the Gigabyte Aorus Master allows you to attach a fan to the back. Hold on. Gigabyte Aorus Master RTX 5090. So check this out. Yeah, you need to... I don't know the answer to that one because that's a great question, though. They allow... I'm pretty sure it's the Gigabyte card. Where's the picture of? They have a picture on the site somewhere. They show... Is it in the gallery? Somewhere in there, they show the... Hold on, maybe it's because this is too big. Cooling system. Feel the chill. Yeah, here it is. They allow you to install the fan on the back. Now, the thing is, like, this looks like a 120 millimeter fan. And I'm pretty sure if you're running a Noctua, the Noctua cooler itself is going to, like, probably be a problem. I don't know. Maybe Gigabyte took that into account when they designed this. But with an air cooler, you have to... Yeah, I don't even know how you would find that info out. Like, I guess you could reach out to Gigabyte to get the actual answer on that. Because, like, it looks like it might... Like, if you're using only one fan, if you have the one fan on the middle, like in the middle of the Noctua, maybe the fins on the front will not touch this. But I can tell you, like, the Noctua will run really close to the top of this GPU. So that fan might run into it. No. I don't think it'll block the RAM. No. Let me see. It should not block the RAM. See, like if we look at my computer here. See that? Well, now hold on a second. Maybe... It would be very foolish of Gigabyte to design a cooler that they give you the option to put a fan on it if it blocks the RAM. I don't see that being a problem. I just can't see them. Like, why would they even give you the option to do that if it blocks the RAM? But the CPU cooler, definitely, you need to... Yeah, you probably have to reach out to Gigabyte to find out the answer on that. Or wait for a review. Because I'm pretty sure a reviewer will test that. Like, if Gigabyte claims it can do this, like with the fan here, then, you know, it probably should be compatible with RAM. Otherwise, that's kind of dumb for them to even offer that as a feature. So, it's going to exhaust the heat into the... All the flow-throughs do that, though. Every single one of them do that. The Founders Edition does that. The previous 4090 Founders Edition did that. All of them do that. So, anyway, the Asus brand won. We're gonna end the poll now, even though like less than half of the viewers voted. So Asus got 38%. Wait, Gigabyte actually beat Zotac and PNY in the end. MSI fell further back. That means people change. Either more people. A lot of people voted for MSI at the start, and then a lot more people at the end voted for Gigabyte. That's what that looks like to me. Zotac and PNY kind of like stayed the same the whole time. That's sad to see Zotac and PNY way back there. I personally would go with Zotac and PNY over any of the others, except for the Asus Astral, and even then, I think the Asus Astral will be way too expensive. You're looking at the Gigabyte 4090 with D15. Oh, okay, but these are different dimensions, aren't they? I don't know. Well, anyway, that is a very interesting question. That is something I didn't even think about when I first saw this. But for the other flow through, like the Astral one, it won't be a problem. Only for this GPU would you need to figure that out. But if you're referring to, so the original question in the super chat was like for cards with a back fan. So if it does this, you definitely need to check. I don't know like why they would do this if it's gonna block the RAM. I'm pretty sure Gigabyte's assuming that you're gonna use a liquid cooler with this, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a problem with the Noctua, the clearance on that. But the Asus one won't have a problem. Like this, that's not gonna be a problem because it's built into the card. So yeah, this one will work fine. So, okay, well, that's pretty much it. Let's see. Next week, it's still not going to be the launch, so we have one more. We have one more live stream before the actual launch. So we got 2 weeks to go before reviews and the launch of the 5090 and the 5080. So if you are getting these GPUs, I have no idea what you're going to be able to get. I don't know what the launch is going to be like. I think there's going to be a lot of GPUs from the AIB. I don't think there's going to be a lot of Founders Edition cards, though. Like, I think if you're somebody who wants the Founders Edition, you are going to have an extremely difficult time trying to get one because you're going to be battling literally hundreds of bots and scalpers. Hundreds of them are all ready to go. Like, they've all come out of the woodwork. They all go into hibernation when there's no products. Then when there's a GPU launch and we get closer to launch, they just all start coming out of the woodwork. All of them wake up. They just get up like zombies. They come out of the ground. They just get up. They come out of the walls. You know, they just come out like ghosts in the walls and all this stuff, and they just pile it on and get ready to buy them all up. So, Micro Center said they will be. You mean there will be? There will be a lot of GPU in stock from AIB. That's what I just said. Yeah. No FE at Micro Center. Micro Center never has the FE, by the way. So that is, yeah. Well, we already knew that. Well, I already knew that. I don't know if the viewers knew that. I mean, I've already mentioned that several times. We've already gone over the procedure of how to buy the FE. I myself have not decided whether or not I'm going to even bother getting any of these GPUs. If I get one, it'll probably be the Founders Edition, though, because I like to have the reference, the direct from manufacturer variant of these GPUs, so that when I have something to test long term, I can always go back and use that as a reference comparison for the next generation. So if I do end up getting one, it will most likely be the Founders Edition graphics card. So I will be going through my personal method on how to buy the Founders Edition graphics card, because that is going to be the hardest one to get. So I will be utilizing that method to buy the Founders Edition graphics card. So we will see if I manage to get one. If I even decide to get one. I haven't even made up my mind at this point. But yeah, all these other ones, if you live near Micro Center, if you're there early, you'll be able to get, like, you know, whichever one of these you want. Like, assuming Micro Center has the Astral, assuming Micro Center has the Supreme, all the Zotac cards, they won't have PNY. So, okay, here, I guess one more thing, and we definitely have to call it quits for this stream. But let's go back to Paint real quick. I like how, like, alt-tabbing to that killed the animation there. Here, so all these nice AMD cards. So here it is. How to buy a RTX 5090 on launch day. It depends on which one. And this is going to be for people that are based in the US. I'm not familiar with all the stores in Asia, like where you buy these sort of things. I know like, well, if we're talking Japan, I would know how to get one if I'm in Japan, but I don't know about the other places. So I don't know how you guys in like places like Hong Kong, for example, or Taiwan. Taiwan, I would imagine Taiwan will have like a whole bunch of these cards because Taiwan is the mecca of like all the AIBs are located there. So really, I think it'd be pretty easy if you live in Taiwan. Although I could be wrong, but I have a feeling if you live in Taiwan, it's probably going to be pretty easy to get one of these on launch day. But if you live in other parts of the world, it's going to be significantly harder. So how to buy a 5090 on launch day if you live in North America. Specifically if you live in the US, because Micro Center is not available in Canada. To my knowledge, it's not available in Canada. So it depends on which one. Micro Center, if you live near a Micro Center, you can basically get whichever one you want, except for a certain few specific cards. So Micro Center, hold on, let's underline this. Micro Center will have Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, Zotac. If you want Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, Zotac, go to Micro Center on launch day, and you will get them. It's that simple. Otherwise, if you want the following brands, the best choice for most people will be Newegg. Newegg will have, why is this still underlined? Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, Zotac, maybe Yeston, or whatever the other one was, Max soon. They might have them. I don't know if they have them at launch, though. So they might not have these at launch. They get these later. These brands are not, like, direct sold from Newegg. They're usually third party, so I'm going to go ahead and remove those. Do they have PNY? I think that's going to be it. Yeah, but I don't think that's going to be available on Newegg at launch. So this is the top two for the AIBs in the US. Otherwise, if you're going to follow me and do my method, what am I about to type here? What am I about to type here? What am I going to type, guys? What's the name of the thing I'm about to type? Say it. Say it. There we go. Best Buy. It's all about that Best Buy. I am going Best Buy. You know why? Nvidia Founders Edition. Nvidia Founders Edition. Exclusive to Best Buy. And PNY. PNY and MSI. PNY, MSI, and the Founders Edition. So if you want Nvidia Founders Edition, Best Buy. The only game in town. Best Buy. PNY and MSI will also be there. In fact, Newegg might have PNY. I wouldn't count on it, though. Newegg might have PNY. Best Buy probably won't have Asus at launch. They typically don't carry Asus day one. Maybe they do, but I wouldn't count on it. If they have Asus, they're going to have okay. If you go to Best Buy for Asus, guess what? You're getting the tough. You go to Best Buy to buy Asus, go and get your tough. If you want a tough, you can go to Best Buy. If you want Astral or one of the cool ones, You know who has the Astral? These guys got the Astral. Those guys have the Astral. So you want an Astral? You want the Supreme? You want the really good, like, luxury 5090s? You go to Micro Center or Newegg. So I don't expect Best Buy to have Asus at launch, realistically. I expect to see PNY, definitely Nvidia. That one for sure, 100% the Founders Edition will be at Best Buy. And then PNY will also most likely be on day one at Best Buy. So these are the choices. So, okay, let's add one final one. What about the people? Because I keep seeing this, and this is hilarious. I keep seeing people mention Amazon. That's so funny. Amazon. Okay, what about Amazon? If you want to go to Amazon, guess what? You want to go to Amazon? Yeah. You want to buy from them? You want to buy from them? You want to go give these guys your money? You want to give money to a scalper? You want to pay $3,000 for a Founders Edition? You want to pay $3,500 for a Founders Edition? Go to Amazon. Go give the scalpers your money. Go give the scalpers your money if you go to Amazon. Not at launch. Newegg won't have scalpers at launch. Newegg will actually have stock at the beginning. We're talking launch day. I'm not talking about 3 weeks after launch. So you want to go to buy from the scalpers? You go to Amazon. Because I'll tell you right now, all the bots that are going to farm the Best Buy, they're going to farm it up. They're going to farm all of these. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to try to flip them on Amazon for like $3,000. Just you watch. I'm going to call it right now. I'm going to call it right now. You're going to see Founders Edition for sale on Amazon. $2,999. $3,499. Just you watch. This is why you do not go to Amazon to buy a graphics card on launch day. Imagine, but there's going to be a lot of people doing that, man. I kid you not, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to buy a 5090 from Best Buy, and they're going to turn around and immediately list it on Amazon or eBay. Amazon or eBay. In fact, I should have put eBay in here also. Amazon/eBay. Both. That's where you want to give your money to a scalper. You want to like positively and reinforce their behavior to do this sort of stuff. Go ahead, go to Amazon. Be my guest. Go do that. Keep funding the secondary market. So what I can tell you is Amazon will sell Nvidia GPUs, next-gen Nvidia GPUs, just not at launch. Amazon will not have the AIBs at launch. So if you go to Amazon and you see like an MSI Supreme, like somebody just said, make sure it's sold by Amazon to not get scalped. So it is possible Amazon might have Gigabyte, they might have some Asus TUF, maybe in small quantities. But I wouldn't. They're on my list. They're not on my list. I will never go to them. I never go to Amazon for a product launch. Never, ever go to Amazon at all costs. Never go there, unless you want to get scammed or unless you want to pay a scalper. So that's my word of advice. If you're in the U.S., these are your three options. And if you want the Founders Edition, there's literally only one game in town. You do not go to Micro Center if you want to buy a Founders Edition. You do not go to Newegg if you want to buy a Founders Edition. If you see a Founders Edition on Newegg, guess what? It's a scalper reselling it on Newegg. They're trying to flip it. They're trying to list it on Newegg, list it on Amazon, list it on eBay, trying to get your money so that you can get your Founders Edition. So the only way to buy the Founders Edition is through Best Buy. This is the only legit option for those of you who desire the Founders Edition so much that you have to have the Founders Edition. Oh, it's going to be the end of the world if I can't get them. Oh, I must have the Founders Edition. If you have to have the Founders Edition, Best Buy is the only game in town if you're in the US. It's pretty lame, but it's the only way. The only option. So, okay. So when I say... I want to clarify one thing because I think there's some misunderstanding in the comments on the chat. Amazon will sell the GPUs legitimately. Amazon themselves, not a third party, not a scalper. No, I'm talking about real Amazon. Real deal Amazon will sell these GPUs, just not at launch. But what I can tell you, Amazon will never sell the FE. Ever. Like legit ever. Amazon themselves will never. You will never see a shipped and sold by Amazon for the Founders Edition. So if you see a Founders Edition listing on Amazon, even if it's like 3 months from now, it is from a scalper. Guaranteed. Amazon will never sell the Founders Edition ever. You know why? Because Best Buy has an exclusive deal / agreement with Nvidia. Oh, I understand. Oh, it's like Bloodborne. It's a Sony PlayStation exclusive. Oh, God of War, when it came out, it was an exclusive. Horizon Forbidden Dawn, Horizon Forbidden West, whatever. It's an exclusive, people. The Founders Edition is a Best Buy exclusive. You cannot buy it from Amazon unless it is being resold by a scalper. Also, the price. Best Buy Founders Edition will be priced at $19.99. $19.99. This will be the legitimate price on launch day for the Best Buy. I should literally call it the Best Buy Founders Edition because that's its real name, because that's the only way you can buy one if you're in the US. You have to get it from Best Buy. There's no other way to get one. So the Best Buy Founders Edition will be $19.99. That will be the price. 100% that will be the price. So, I myself, if I decide to get one, I will be definitely going for this one. The Best Buy, that's why we're making such a big deal about Best Buy, because that's the only one that I will plan to attempt to try to get. The only way. Best Buy. The Best Buy exclusive. Yes, employees are not allowed. Which is kind of lame, but I understand why they're doing that. The reason why they're doing that is because they're trying to combat scalpers that are going to try to buy, like... They're trying to stop, Best Buy does that because they're trying to stop, like, scalpers from trying to, like, use Best Buy employees as a middleman to try to bypass some of the restrictions. Are you going to get the FE or the Astral? Guys, if, I've already said this like 5 times now. If I choose to get, I have not made up my mind. At this point, I am still undecided on whether or not I will actually get a 5090. But know this, if I am to attempt to buy the RTX 5090 on launch day, I will be getting the Founders Edition from Best Buy. That will be the one. That will be the one. And only that one. And that'll be the only one. I will ignore all of these. I will ignore all of these. I will ignore the PNY and the MSI, and we don't even, like, this doesn't even exist. This doesn't even exist. It's a figment of my imagination. I don't even know what Amazon and eBay is. Like, that doesn't exist. It's like, I don't know what that is. Like, what's that? I don't know what that is. For me, there is the one and only. That's it. That's the only choice. You have one path. You have one path in life. It's very easy. It's Best Buy. Best Buy, that's it. Very simple. Life is simple. Best Buy, that's it. The whole thing is Best Buy. That's it. So for me, that's the choice. So anyway, it depends on what you guys are going to attempt to get. Like, if you don't care about the Founders Edition, you don't care about all the Best Buy PNY stuff, and you want the Astral or one of the other ones, if you live near Micro Center, there's a good chance that you can get the one you want as long as you go on launch day. What I can tell you right now, Micro Center will have lines. There will be people at every single Micro Center. There will be people camping. Every single Micro Center will have people camping outside the night before to buy the 5090. So that'll be the only challenge. For those of you who are going to go the Micro Center route, trying to get the Supreme or the Astral or whatever, like, you're going to have to deal with the lines of people at Micro Center. That's the only problem. It's probably not going to be that long of a line, but here, the problem, there's one problem. The problem is there's another GPU. RTX 5080. 5080 is also launching. 5080 is also launching, which means the lines are going to be longer. Because there's going to be more people. There's not only are there going to be 5090 buyers, there's going to be 5080 people there as well. So it's going to be, yeah, like Human Sword is going to be there. You know, you're just going to add to the line. So it's like there's going to be all these other additional people because they're doing 2 graphics cards together. How wonderful. Yes, just make that line 3 times as long. Thank you, 5080 buyers. London just subbed to the channel at a perfect time. You're welcome. Yeah. So all that's gonna drive Newegg's network traffic even higher. Best Buy is probably going to crash. The website's probably going to have problems. It's going to be really, really slow. People are going to add the Founders Edition to their cart. They're going to proceed to checkout. It's going to time out on them. Then they're going to have to start over again. And then when they try the second time, same thing. They try the third time, and guess what? Oh, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, it's out of stock. There's no more Founders Edition. Goodbye. That's how it's gonna go for a lot of people. Trust me, I'm someone who has been through a lot of graphics card launches. I know exactly how it's gonna go down. I know exactly how this is gonna play out. Websites are gonna freeze. Websites are gonna reload. Websites are gonna like crash. The thing's gonna spin. The little thing's gonna spin. Loading. Checkout loading. Come on, checkout. I'm ready. Take my money. Oh, it's gone. Out of stock. Sorry. Try again later. It's like, that's what's going to happen. That is exactly what's going to happen, guys. Like, that is exactly what's going to happen. I've been through the 3080 launch. I've been through the 3090 launch. Heck, I've been through the PlayStation 5 launch. We've been through the 6800 XT, the 6900 XT. We've been through 4090. You know what was easy for me to buy? You know what the easiest GPU was for me to buy? I'll show you. There's 2 that I remember. There's literally 2 GPUs. I'll tell you. Although I won't say it was super, super easy. But, hold up. Let me see. Okay, the easiest GPU that I bought on launch day was this. The AMD Radeon RX 480. This GPU was very good when it came out. I'll never forget when I bought this GPU. It was June 29th, 2016. In the summer. June 29th, 2016. That was the day. It's like ingrained into my memory. June 29th, 2016. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was like the most magical GPU launch. You literally just go to Micro Center, you walk right in, they know exactly why you're there. You just choose the one you want. They had all the choices. If you wanted the reference card, I bought the reference card specifically from XFX because XFX put a backplate on the reference card where nobody else did that. Everyone else just had the naked PCB, but nope, XFX put a backplate and charged $10 for their backplate, and I'm like, yeah, I'm getting that one because that's the best one. So I have this graphics card to this day. The 480 is what I use when I diagnose motherboards or troubleshoot issues with computers. This is the one I use. You know why? Single 6-pin. Single 6-pin. So this GPU, I literally walked in, I could choose whatever 4080 I wanted, but I chose the reference card from XFX. They had all of them. They had Sapphire, they had MSI Gaming X, they had XFX, you know what the XFX one was called? GTR. Oh my god, I can't believe this. Do they have they actually had a GTR. There's literally a GTR. Where is that GTR? XFX GTR RX 480. How did I get a XFX reference card instead of an XFX GTR RX 480 Black Edition? Like, how did I screw that up and not get this? Considering the name of this channel. Considering the name of this channel, the XFX GTR, like that, what was I thinking, you know? But anyway, XFX Game Tech Ready Edition, yeah, for real, right? Like that's what I'm saying. So but I didn't get this card, so I got the reference card because I always buy reference. So, and hence the reason why, like, if I'm gonna get a 5090, guess what? It's gonna be the reference, which is, guess what? The Founders Edition. So anyway, this was the most memorable GPU launch ever for me, because it was the only one that it was like so low effort. You just go to the store. There was a bunch of people buying this graphics card. Like, I wasn't the only one. There was like a whole bunch of people. Micro Center knew exactly why I was there. I didn't even have to ask anyone anything. They had signs, they had arrows, they were directing you where to go. It was great. It was such a smooth launch. There was not this super long line of people out the door all the way around. It wasn't like that. It was smooth operating. You just go in there, pick the one you want. They have all of them to choose from. It was great. And it wasn't even that expensive. It was like $250. Second best launch, RTX 4090 launch. Because you know what launched when the RTX 4090 launched? The Intel Arc A770 and the A750 together. They launched. There was literally 3 GPUs that launched on the exact same day. Arc A770, Arc A750, and the Nvidia 4090. And you know what? Everybody was there to buy 4090. I walked into the store. I didn't wait in line. I waited for all the crowds of people, all those losers waiting in line to buy 4090. I waited for them to get out of the way. I come into the store. There's no more line. There's no more crowd. I'm like, hey, I'm here to get the new GPU that just launched. It's called the A770. Everybody looked at me like they don't know what I'm talking about. They're like, do you want a Zotac 4090? It just launched. We have Zotac. And I'm like, Zotac, No, I want the Intel Arc A770. And they're like, what about this MSI Ventus 4090? It's great. It's like MSRP. And I'm like, yeah, no, I didn't come here with $1,600 to buy a phone. No, I'm looking for this, the A770. This is the real deal, not some 4090 nonsense. Who cares? That's 4090. That's dumb. I want this. And you know what? I had to like persuade two salespeople to go in the back of the store, dig through all the shipping boxes of all those 4090s, those lame 4090s, finally found two of these. They had two of these in an unlabeled box with 5 A750s. And that's how I got my limited edition Intel Arc A770 on launch day. On launch day. Exact same day as the launch of the RTX 4090, October 12th, 2022. This thing lives its life sitting in its original packaging. It's like a house decoration. It's a house decoration. It's a nice, someone said it's a paperweight. I wouldn't call it a paperweight. I'll say it's a nice piece of furniture. It's a nice piece of furniture. So yeah. I'm still trying to get the new one. I'm still trying to get this one. The B, what is it? The B5, whatever, this thing. I'm still trying to find this. This thing is evading me. Like, it's literally evading me left and right. I cannot get one. I cannot get one. It's impossible to buy this. Like, I'm waiting for the Newegg to restock. I'm waiting for Micro Center to restock. I'm waiting for Best Buy to restock. It's impossible. It's impossible. I've almost given up. I've almost given up on my Intel Arc B580. It's impossible to buy one. I don't understand. It's like, wow, this thing is so hard to get. It's so hard to get. I really want one of these. Although the more I look at the people complaining about it, the less attractive it is. So it's like, as time goes by, I'm less and less interested in this GPU. But I really, really want one of these. So it's like, man, it's so hard to get. I want this flow through design, like, but if I can't get one by, I don't know, like, if we start hearing articles, rumors of them discontinuing it, then I'll give up at that point. But still gonna try to get one. I want to pair this up with a 7900 XTX. You got one? Where'd you get it from? Where did you manage to get that from? Because I've been trying to find this, like, literally for months. Since it came out. Because I've almost given up on it. You got a Newegg combo? Wait, Newegg combo? Okay, well, I have been monitoring the Newegg listing, the Best Buy listing, and the Micro Center listing. And they never seem to have them in stock. They're always out of stock. So, in fact, I saw it on Newegg. It came in stock on Newegg like 2 weeks ago. And I was able to add it to cart, but then it was, it was one of those things. It was like, oh, sorry, we don't have any more. We made a mistake. So, that's exactly how I think the 5090 launch is going to go next or 2 weeks from now. But yeah, like, trying to get one of these is going to be just as challenging as trying to get a RTX 5090. People are scalping these. All the listings for this on Amazon are from scalpers. That's the reason why I still don't have one. Because I'm not going to buy this from a scalper. I really want the GPU, but I don't really want it that bad. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to buy it from a scalper. I'm just saying. So, it's like, yeah, You can buy one of these from a scalper on Amazon, but I'm not gonna do that. So I'm just monitoring Best Buy, Micro Center, Newegg, because I think that's the only way to get one. So I really want one of these though. Like I've been saving up for the B580 for a long time, guys. Like I've been saving up for this since after I did the live stream build with the Godlike. Like I've been saving up for a while. It's basically been months of saving up for this GPU. So I started saving for the B580 probably in like August or July. It's been a long time. I've been waiting for it for a long time. And then when it launched, I couldn't get one. So now it's like, hey, I'm still waiting for this GPU, but I can't get one. So, I want to make overclocking video for it, overclocking guide for this. I want to see how this does in ray tracing compared to the what is it? The other GPU that I have in this price category, which would be like the 7600. Which I'm pretty sure this is going to be way better at ray tracing than the AMD card. But I will also eventually end up using it as a video, like a video encoder, video decoder. Yeah. Technically, you don't really need this for that because if you already have like an Nvidia or AMD card, you can just use those cards instead. But it's, it's cool just to have it. So basically, for those wondering what I'm actually going to do with this card long term, I will be pairing this up with my 7900 XTX. So currently, the 7900 XTX is paired up with an Intel A380. So I want to replace the A380 with the B580. The A770, I'm not going to use that. That is a piece of jewelry. Let's put it that way. That is like a piece of furniture because it's so rare and it's going to command a lot of resale value in the future. Why? Because the A770 is Intel's very first. It's like the very first GPU. So it's kind of like a collector's item. The way I look at the Intel GPU, these limited editions, these are basically collector's items. Like legitimately, like this one is usable, but do I really need to use this? No. I have an XTX. Why would I use this? Like the XTX is, I use a 4K monitor. Why would I use this? Like this is not designed for 4K, but I can make a lot of content. I can make some guides. I can do my own opinion on it if I actually have the product on hand. I can do benchmark comparisons with this and newer cards in the future. So it's like, there's a lot of stuff I can do with it. So it is important for me to have this for the channel. But long term, when I'm done with all of that, I'll use it as a second GPU. Or, you know what, I'll just throw it in my Threadripper computer, and it'll be like my third graphics card in that computer. You know what's funny? If I put this in my Threadripper, I'll literally have a computer that has an Nvidia GPU, an AMD Radeon GPU, and an Intel Arc GPU. My Threadripper computer will literally have 3 graphics cards, one of each brand in it. That is insane to think about. Like, I could literally throw this in Threadripper as the third graphics card because I already have 2 graphics cards in that computer. So, yeah, that's another thing I could do with that. I could just throw it in Threadripper. It's like, hey, you got room for this? Yeah, we got lots of room in here. We got lots of PCIe. We got lots of PCIe in here. So, yeah, we'll just do that. So, just got the Godlike. Yeah, it's big. It's a heavy motherboard. It's actually heavier than my Threadripper motherboard. It's almost exact same size. It would be cool to mess with this for like GPU virtualization and GPU pass-through and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff I need to do with it, man. Like, to be honest, like it goes beyond gaming. Like, if I'm gonna buy this, seriously, I don't care too much about the gaming performance on this. I want to see, like, what does it do outside of gaming? That's really what... Obviously, I will test the gaming performance, but as someone who uses a 4K monitor on a daily basis, like, realistically, this is not the smart choice for someone with a 4K monitor. Just saying. So it doesn't have enough VRAM. It's definitely not the bus width for a 4K monitor, but it would be used as like a second or third GPU. Dash E or Hero, that's going to depend on if you want to spend the $200 more for worse heat sinks but a better looking board. Dash E has better heat sinks than the Hero for the SSDs, I'll tell you that. And it's also $200 less. So it really just depends on, like, do you want better heat sinks for less money, or do you want a nicer looking board for more money with worse cooling? Like, that's what it comes down to. But functionality, they're almost exactly the same. The only difference is the Hero has the Slim SAS, and the Dash E does not. ATX 3.0, you don't have to worry about power spikes of PSUs, so you can get the exact number. I don't know what you mean. ATX 3.0, you don't have to worry about power spikes. Why would you not have to worry about power spikes? Oh, well, I guess the 3.0 power supply can handle them better. That doesn't mean that you don't have to worry about them. I wouldn't say that, but it can definitely handle transient spikes better. It's designed to behave more appropriately compared to just, oh, it spiked, I'm going to turn off the entire computer right now. Like, it'll not do that. Or at least in theory, it shouldn't do that. Did I review the Apex? No. I was surprised that board got announced. I'm kind of, I'm surprised. If Asus announced the Apex, then I don't understand why MSI has not announced the Ace, nor has MSI announced, like, a 2-DIMM overclockers board for the X or the B8, whatever, like for the newer chipset, the newer revision. So does the Dash E, though. The Dash E also has an external clock generator. Both of them have that, so there's no difference there. ASRock Taichi, great board. Yeah, the ASRock Taichi also does have the external clock generator, but that wasn't the original question. That is a good board if you can find one, though. Like, they're always out of stock. For some reason, it's, like, almost impossible to buy an ASRock motherboard these days. I don't know why, man. Like, you can never find the Nova. You can never, ever find the Nova. You can never find the Taichi. And the Taichi Lite is, like, a myth at this point. Or maybe the Nova's a myth. I don't know. I did do a video about it. Rebirth, yes, I will be getting Rebirth for PC. That's already on the list. There's not a lot of games, actually, that I have noted down. So, for this week, most of the games are this quarter, actually. Dynasty, Warriors, Origins. So, I've actually been playing Dynasty Warriors Origins, so that's really good. I wish there was a character creator, though. I'm really kind of annoyed that there isn't for that game. Considering a lot of Koei Tecmo's previous games had character creators, and they were like that style. Well, not really like hack and slash, but they had character creators. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is next week, so we will be covering that at some point. I don't know if we'll be doing it immediately, but we will be covering that. Monster Hunter Open Beta Test 2 is going to be February 6th through 8th, or 6th, depending on where you are in the world. February 6th through the 9th, and then also on the 13th through the 16th. And then Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza, or Yakuza Pirate, what is it? Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. That is going to be on the 20th of February, so we will also be covering that game on this channel. Also, Trails Through Daybreak 2 is going to be on Valentine's Day. That's another game that I will be covering. So, expect to see the following on this channel. We may cover Dynasty Warriors, although I have covered the demo, so I don't know if I'll actually stream Dynasty Warriors Origins. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth PC, we may do some kind of GPU comparison stuff on there. Then we have the 5090 and the 5080 launch the following week. Then we're in February, and there's going to be those beta tests. Trails Through Daybreak 2 is going to be on February 14th. Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii is going to be February 20th. And then Monster Hunter Wilds will be at the end of February. So expect once that game comes out, there will be no more Genshin Impact on this channel. There will be no more Honkai Star Rail on this channel. Everything will become Monster Hunter Wilds. All the live service games will be completely deleted, and everything will go to Monster Hunter Wilds. So that will change some of the vibe of the weekend live streams. So just FYI, if you are a fan of Monster Hunter Wilds, you're gonna see a lot of Monster Hunter Wilds. If you're not a fan of Monster Hunter Wilds, as Jensen Wong said in his CES, well, get used to it. And then Nisa, what is this? What do we got? And that's pretty much it. So yeah, Monster Hunter Wilds, Like a Dragon. That's as far out as I have forecasted for games that I'm interested in. There's another one too that I'm forgetting that I don't have listed here. What is the game? Oh, From Software's Elden Ring Night Rain will be there. There is a network test that overlaps with one of the Monster Hunter tests. I forget which one. I think it's the second one. But I will try to participate in that. I've signed up for that. I haven't gotten a confirmation yet from them, from Bandai Namco. But if they allow us to stream that, you can expect to see that on this channel. But that's going to be it for gaming, for the gaming side. Because we do cover gaming on this channel. Not as much as the tech stuff, but we do occasionally cover gaming. So that's kind of an update on games. City Skylines 2, I don't know. I don't do city builder games because they take forever. I mean, I say that as someone who has put like literally 1,000 hours into Monster Hunter over the years, but the dynamic gameplay of and like the random like always on the run style of Monster Hunter is just it doesn't feel like I'm putting so many hours into it, if that makes sense, compared to something like a city builder or a strategy game. Am I excited for RDNA 4? Yes. That is probably going to be the most interesting GPU launch of the year. The Nvidia launch will be okay. I don't think... Okay. I think the 5090 will be the only interesting Nvidia GPU that launches this year. I think the 5080 will be a disappointment. Well, maybe not an outright disappointment, but I think the 5080 will be underwhelming compared to the 4080. I think the other cards in the stack, as you go further down the stack, they may just be mediocre uplifts over the previous generation. So I really think the 5890 is the only one, which is kind of sad because it's so expensive. But I think that the more interesting cards to look at from a value standpoint are definitely going to be the RDNA 4 graphics cards. I don't know which motherboard you're referring to, but okay. Yeah, but anyway, so that's going to be it. We'll talk again next Thursday about... I mean, there's really nothing to talk about tech-wise except these GPUs over and over again until they finally launch, and then we actually know how they perform. But I would expect NVIDIA's numbers are fairly accurate. So I think the 5090... Maybe we'll talk about this next week again, but just quickly, the 5090 will be about 30% faster than the 4090. The 4080, I think, is going to be like 15% faster, maybe 20% faster than the 4080. And then the other cards, the gap just shrinks more and more the further down you go. So that's basically it, guys. We'll talk again as we get closer to launch. We'll talk about more about the launch day experience, the launch day process. What day is the launch day? Is this on a Thursday? Is this gonna launch on the day of Tech Thursdays? What was the launch again? Like, I always forget. Is it January 30th? Wait, what? It's on Tech Thursdays. The 5090 launches on a day that we have Tech Thursdays in the evening. Wow. Okay, well, okay, we'll be talking about that day. It's like we're gonna be reviewing. It's gonna be a review of the launch day experience. That's literally what the Tech Thursdays on the 30th of January is gonna be all about. Live stream the purchase. By the time we do this stream, like they're gonna be all sold out. So I don't see the point of that. But we'll talk about that again next Thursday, because next Thursday is the very last one. It's the very last Tech Thursdays before the launch of the 50 series. So, yeah, in other news, they did launch the motherboards, the B850 motherboards. So there's more budget options now. If you're trying to build like a 9800X 3D gaming PC, now there's some even cheaper options. So that's really interesting. Interestingly, well, not interestingly, kind of expectedly, Gen 5 is not required on those boards. But some of them did Gen 5 on them, which is pretty interesting. Dynasty Warriors came as a surprise. Well, no, I streamed the demo, like, I think, like 2 months ago? Whenever it first was available for download. We may be covering Final Fantasy VII Rebirth next weekend, and then after that will be the launch. So I guess for content on the channel, I'll try to put a video out on like summarizing the 50 series and like what to get. Although everyone else has already done this video, so I feel like I'll be redundant at this point. But we'll do a video about like, what the 5090 is, the target resolution or recommended resolution if you want to buy one. Like how are you going to get the actual value of this considering it's $2,000? Maybe the same thing for 5080 and down the stack. Although technically speaking, since it's only 5090 and 5080, those are really the only ones that we're going to be talking about. Otherwise, let's see. This week is Dynasty Warriors. Next week is Final Fantasy VII on PC. And sometime between now and February, or sometime between now and like Valentine's Day, AMD is supposed to do some kind of announcement for the RDNA 4. So they might just wait. They might just let the 50 series 90 and 80 blow through, and then once they're out of the way, then AMD might do their product announcement for their GPUs. But we'll see what they do. Anyway, that's gonna be it for this stream. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will probably do. There'll probably be like one live stream for the weekend, I guess. I'm not sure yet. I've been really busy. With other things. That's why there hasn't been a YouTube video in a while. I do need to do a YouTube video. There hasn't been an actual YouTube video. It's mostly been like live streams. So we're going to try to get back to making YouTube videos other than like MSI Godlike videos. Because I was looking at my videos and the last 3 or 4 videos on the channel are all MSI X870E Godlike. So it's like, okay, I need to do something other than the Godlike. So we'll look into that. Maybe an overclocking guide for the 9800X 3D or something. So something like that is probably going to come out probably after the GPU launch. So we'll probably do some more videos on the GPUs themselves. And then, yeah, we'll see what happens with 5090, 5080. And then once we get into February, we'll see what to talk about when it comes to AMD. But it looks like it's going to be a lot of GPU coverage for the next several weeks. So, all right, guys, that's going to be it for this week. Tech Thursdays, episode 93 on the RTX 50 series and AMD's upcoming RDNA 4. Thanks for tuning in, and if you're new to the channel, do get subscribed if you like these open form, long form discussions where we talk about all things that are recent in enthusiast tech. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. And thanks for tuning in. And I will see you guys on the next episode of Tech Thursdays. Until then, take care and I'll see you then. Bye.